It looks like I am live. I will be back in just a minute.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for hopping on. JJ will be here in just a second. We're letting numbers climb to get people on so we can start answering your questions as they come in. And just a reminder, we are going to be answering the questions that were posted on yesterday's video first, and then we will dive into what questions you guys have. So once you get on here, say hello. So awesome to see you guys. We had such an amazing turnout yesterday, and we're very, very thankful for that. So thank you guys for hopping on. Hello, Kenda. Well, thank you for your support. It means everything. I'm so glad that you guys are here. It's funny how something that started out to just be for clients has turned into this, and you guys, well, you rock, Clay. Thank you. You are, Clay comments on a lot of stuff, so we really appreciate that. I hope you guys are all safe wherever you are and that you're all feeling well. And knowing that we will be getting through this together. No longer want to see my mug. JJ is almost here. Appreciate that, guys. Yes, JJ has slept, believe it or not. Though he is kind of like an Energizer bunny. He doesn't require much sleep. All right, the man of the hour.
Very kind. Hope everybody's doing well, feeling well, safe, secure. We really appreciate yesterday. We had an overwhelming response. So I appreciate everybody that's tuning in, and those that are back. Clay, thank you. You rock. Frederick Lowe, I see some familiar names from yesterday. Thank you so much. I did get to sleep about 2, then woke up. So I got a little bit more sleep last night. So I appreciate that. Tom, you're founding member of the JJ the CPA International Fan Club. That's Tom.
I love it.
Tom Stark. Oh my goodness. Frederick Lowe, I had a nightmare. I had to wake up in time to post my question. Well, hopefully we need whatever Frederick's question is, let's address that if you had a nightmare about it. Joseph, hello. Lee Clark, my husband's a CPA, and I'm pretty sure JJ is now his inspiration. Thank you, JJ and Amanda, for your time today. Thank you, Lee. And very excited to have fellow CPAs involved. Harry, thank you. You bet. Agio 711, we couldn't have done it without you. Very kind. I really am enjoying this. Clay, JJ has entered the room. Kenda, Kenda, my husband hears his voice and says, "Are you watching JJ again?" CH, JJ Talk Show. God's Dozer, JJ in the house. I really appreciate it. Who selects your clothes? Well, I appreciate that. I do. I find it fun. You know, you've got to sit and work all day. Jasmine, I refer to JJ to my workers. It's like having a partner in your pocket. Ooh, I like that. A partner in your pocket. I love that. If we use that, we need to track down Jazzy Mine.
Ask everyone if they can see you clearly.
Can everybody see me clearly? Do we have an issue with the stream? Let's see. Larissa, hello. Tina. Another CPA. I love it. Welcome from Kentucky. I love it. Hopefully we'll be speaking in Kentucky. Might be able to meet you. Yes. Tina, Larissa. Hi from Texas. You know, I went to school in Abilene, Texas, and started my career in Dallas.
Someone wants to know how you got your haircut. I guess you don't have to tell them Amanda's really talented. Amanda takes very good care of JJ the CPA.
You know, when you're a CPA, you have all kinds of connections. Let's see, Robert of Philadelphia Salons, welcome back. Great to see you again as well. God First, Then You. J-Day, CPA, how are you? Thank you so much for joining. Let's see, Noga, 110613. Clay, we need t-shirts. Well, I tell you what, email us, and Clay, you let us know. We'll send you a t-shirt. We actually have some left from when we were on tour. Honored. Let's see, Josh from Detroit, what's up? Right, Kid Rock country.
That's right.
We're big fans of Kid Rock. You know, at the end of my videos, I say, you've never met a CPA quite like me. And Amanda came up with that when we started videos 2 years ago, and it was because we had recently been to a Kid Rock concert, and actually 2 of them within a week. And he has a song, You've Never Met a Dun 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 Quite Like Me. So anyways, she came up with that. Jim Westerman, howdy. Let's see, WW Chan, how did I get the haircut? Oh, I see where that came from. Yeah. Gene McIntyre, I think we saw you yesterday, a lot of you yesterday. Thank you so much. What's the update on April 10th? I have not heard anything in depth about it on the news. Yeah, I know we'll get to the questions, but me neither. You know, I was hoping yesterday the SBA was going to come out with something related to that. It was only clarifications to what has already been occurring. Dudley, you bet. Thank you. Noga, I would like to buy a t-shirt. Send us an email. JJ at JJ the CPA. We'll send you one for free. Let's see. Joseph, CPA from PA. Were we in Pennsylvania?
We have not been.
Not been to Pennsylvania. Surgeons.
Based out of PA.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's see. Run Bad Poker, which is an attorney. Probably has a good poker face. Used to practice tax law, but still has a question or two. Linda, greetings from Norman. All right.
Norman.
Yeah, that's right. Let's see. Jazzy Mine and Walter. Hope you get some insight. Let's see. Wow, got skipped. Hope to get some insight on April 10th. Yeah, we are going to talk about that for independent contractors. And hello from Boston. We did get to go through Boston. It was freezing cold. Everything was closed.
Yeah.
Went to Harvard, and I shot some videos in front of Harvard Business Law. All right, let's. We want to get going here. Lisa, hello from Michigan. Kendra, CPA from Louisiana. Thank you so much for the CPAs in the house, and really anybody. You know, I'm a presenter with Surgent, and I am working with them now to put together a special course. Now, you all may not need to go to it because you're coming to my live feeds, but Surgent and I are putting together a special course that's on April 22nd, 1 to 3 Central Standard Time. It does cost because Surgent charges. Let's see.
Oh, we have a tattoo studio that says,
nice.
Hi from El Paso, Texas. You're the best CPA. Let me know if you ever need a tattoo.
I will, because I got one right here. So anyway, yeah, I appreciate that. And let's see, from West Texas?
El Paso.
Oh, El Paso. Okay.
Paso.
Got somebody from Tennessee, Thrive Academy. What's up? Darius, goodness, got skipped here. Seth Denson, the Seth Denson. So Seth is a superstar. Seth Denson in the healthcare industry. He's a good-looking man too, but he's on Fox News. OAN. I've been just Cheddar, Max News, did I already say that? Radio stations, has his own business. He's got like a true studio. That's how often he's on TV. I was lucky enough to be on his show, so check out on his channel. Is it, Seth, tell us, you got a new channel name, and I don't know that I know it, but Seth Denson on the healthcare, he had the tax doctor in, so I was on his show last week.
Yeah, Seth Denson or GDP Advisors.
GDP Advisors. Yeah. Let's see. I just feel like I want to say hi. Victor, hello from Seattle. I grew up in Mount Lake Terrace. We were up in Seattle a couple years ago. Let's see. Is the video still frozen? Steve Reagan. Great job, JJ. Thank you. We've got Rose Funder. Big thanks. Matt Ebanks. Best in the CPA came. Thank you so much. We need to like take pictures so that when I'm feeling down,
Yeah.
It's after tax season. I can read all these wonderful things. I so much appreciate it. Hi from a small town, Bentonville, South Carolina, owner of a dentistry on Broad. Thank you for joining. Hopefully we'll provide some good value today. Can you talk about how, as a person doing rental, qualify for the PPP or EIDL? Don't qualify for PPP. You get the EIDL. Just put in your rent information. And we are going to talk further about that because I researched it yesterday. We got from goodness. I want to keep saying hi, Victor.
It's not JJ's. Mountain Dew is actually mine, and it's Diet Mountain Dew. This is how I stay up with JJ. Like I have to keep up with him.
Colleen, JJ, the goat of CPAs. Joseph from Surgeant. I love it. Surgeant is Joseph from Surgeant, or Surgeant is PA? Harlan Bauer, CPA from Albany, New York. Welcome. We were in New York area 3 different times. Loved it. Fishkill, up in Fishkill, New York, actually, for one of them.
Your help is keeping our practice cardiac care group in Florida going while we're saving lives.
Wow. Well, that means a lot. I really appreciate that. And thanks for all that you're doing. Definitely more on the front side here. Another CPA from Chicago, Shahzad. I probably said that incorrectly. Where on the SBA side are notifications updated, posted? You know what? I had to backdoor it. I will try and come up with that link. I had to backdoor it. No one was putting anything out there, and I had to find it through an article of an article of an article. Let's see, Trump press conference about to start. Actually, it's not. We called the White House. We told them that we were going live and that Trump needed to hold off. So anyways, just kidding. Destin, Florida. Love it. Been to Seaside. Let's see, Jenny Kim, Philadelphia from Brotherly Love. Corwin Wall, CPA from Wildcat Land, Kansas. All right. I've got one client up in Kansas, one of my favorites. Accountant New Orleans. Thank you, Lawrence. Seth Denson, JJ the CPA, Brandon Christie. Is there a way to check on the disaster loan app? There's not. From New Jersey. Good afternoon from Central Coast, California. Boom. I was born in Venice, California, and lived it for a time in Torrance and Compton before it was Compton. ProStone Solutions. Hi. Goodness. I really appreciate all this. Let's see.
A chiropractor from Kansas. Thanks for helping us in our practice.
Well, you bet. You bet. Schedule C, Net Profit Works. Yes, Demur. Staff accountant from Bay Area in the house. If you're a staff accountant, stick with us. Stay in the profession. We need you. We need you. We need you. Colleen, greatest of all time. Thank you. Lynn Liu. Hi. Got approved for $3,400 for EIDL today. Waiting for funding. How do they determine how much they gave you? Yeah, that's interesting. You got $3,400. I have an idea on that. Let's see, you might know my cousins. They were in MLT and I think about the same age. Small world. Yeah, graduated. I actually was supposed to graduate in 1990. I left a year early. So I left in 89. So yeah, Breakfast Club eras. Let's see, gosh, staff accountant, Demur, CPA, Northern Virginia. Thanks for all the info. You bet, Janice. Stephanie Johnson, love your posts. When will you start answering the questions? Hope to watch the White House Daily Press Conference. Hey, put it up. You can come back and watch mine. But anyways, let's see. Restaurant from Maine. Glad you're here. When did you apply for the EIDL? I think you were asking somebody else. Chiropractor from Kansas. Has actually anyone received funding? I've not had any clients, whether it's EIDL or the PPP. Graduated from Mount Lakes Terrace High School. Brooke Witt. I love it. 89 is when I actually left. 1099, you can apply. Mountain Dew. All right, Pennsylvania, go Clemson Tigers. You are the best, like my Tigers, love it. Let's see, this is therapy, keeps me sane. All right, so we will get into the questions. How wonderful. I appreciate that. We already got thumbs up going. So anyways, you're going to go through.
Before we get started on this, we need you guys to hit subscribe and to please share this video. But to please subscribe, because that is the way that we can continue to help you guys.
I'm a numbers guy. Seeing the numbers helps keep me motivated. And you went to sleep last night, and it was like 12:30, and I said, well, I have a responsibility to stay up and read and research, and I'm loving it. So anyways, what's our first question?
Okay, these are questions from yesterday, so no one get mad if I'm not answering questions from the feed. We're going to answer them from yesterday's video.
And we'll get to the feed.
Yes, we will.
Yeah, if we don't get to the feed, we'll get to them tomorrow. That's how we're trying to keep up with it.
The first question is from Superstar Customs. 3 things. 1, I bought your book.
Oh, thank you.
2, when do you sleep? 3, let your viewers know that if EIDL or PPP doesn't work out, that they should look into state-run programs. New Jersey has about 2 or 3 that I may qualify for. Thanks.
Hey, thank you for that. What a great way to share some wonderful information. That is true. Oklahoma came out with something recently for depressed real estate areas. With the EIDL, that's really a great candidate for 2 reasons. 1, if you don't have any employees, then that's really your choice. And then if you do have employees, but you have wages under $48,000, right now, as of yesterday, there was a bulletin that came out, and I will put it in the link of this after we're done, because I don't have a way of doing it. But the bulletin came out yesterday saying, yes, you can apply for the EIDL and the PPP. We all know that the problem with that is that your PPP then will not be forgivable to the extent of your EIDL. So you get EIDL, you keep it, you don't have to pay it back. That all works the same. But if you have your PPP money and then you've gotten EIDL money, that's going to make that PPP unforgivable to the portion that you got the EIDL. But in this memo that I could find nowhere, and it came out of the SBA, but a local office, indicated in essence, and I've not heard it anywhere officially, but if you've run out of your PPP money and the 8 weeks has run, then you might be in a circumstance where you can use the EIDL. So I'm not going to shoot any videos on that. You're only hearing it because you're here live, which I love it and I appreciate it. So thank you for that tip. Definitely check on state programs and grants locally to support you.
Next one is from Tom Starr. JJ, you are absolutely amazing. My banker submitted my PPP app on my PPP app yesterday. Whether the money arrives on time or not, can I pay my employees their average salary on April 16th for the 4/1/15 pay period and claim those wages for PPP?
Great question. Now let's make sure, is everybody able to hear Amanda when she asks the question? Because I have the microphone, maybe we should take the microphone off, but if you couldn't hear the question, let us know so that we can make arrangements that you can. So here's how I understand it strictly, is that it's what you pay for in the 8-week period, starting with the approval date, not when you get the money. So my understanding is, unless there's further clarification, is even if the pay period runs earlier than when it is approved, if you're paying the payroll in the 8-week period, then it will count towards the forgiveness. Now, I'm waiting anxiously for some more clarifications of that true 8-week period. I'm also hoping, quite frankly, that they change this to where we have 12 weeks, because we know we have a lot of employers that how do we know we're going to be open in 4 or 6 or 8 weeks? Or even if we are open in 4 weeks, now we only have 4 weeks left of payroll that can be forgiven. So we're in a little bit of a quandary there. But what I'd say is the purpose of this PPP money is for you to be able to make that payroll. So if the payroll falls within that period of time, I think you're golden. Same thing with rent. I'll just throw that out as an example. I had told my clients right at the first of the month, I said, if you don't really have the money to pay rent, hold off. If you got PPP money coming, not to play any games here, but if you don't have the money to pay rent and you are paying it within the 8-week period, all that's going to count is 2 months worth of rent. So you couldn't prepay rent, but you can make sure that it's all included. So if you owe rent from just a few days ago and you got PPP money coming, and I hope you get it as soon as possible. Tom Stark, he's commented quite often. So hopefully we'll be able to know from him if he's willing to share when he gets his PPP money.
Okay, William B. I work full-time and I have my own side photography business, LLC. I have health insurance through my employer, which cost me a fortune. Can I incorporate those costs into the PPP for my business application as health insurance costs?
Okay, so yes, because you have the side photography business, Schedule C, I'm assuming self-employed, you qualify for the PPP. What you might want to verify though is, and we got a little trickiness going on right now because we had someone that verified they didn't get the full 10K. And yesterday in this memo from the SBA, they indicated something about 1,000 per employee, but that's not the only indicator of determining how much money you actually get. But I do know if you have, more than 10 employees, it seems as though you're going to get 10 grand. If you had one employee, it does ask what your cost of goods sold are. So I don't know if they're then adding that to that. So we've gotten zero guidance on that. So there's a little risk here. But if you have a photography business and you're not netting, too much, a couple $1,000 maybe is what you're netting. And I don't mean that you're not good at photography, but if it's a side gig, maybe you have expenses and you don't have a lot of net income is what it's based on. So run the numbers and try and figure out if you think PPP or EIDL. I think kind of your break even right there might be somewhere around, if you're at 16 to 18,000 or less, you might go with the EIDL. You might get more doing that. But in terms of incorporating that health insurance, it has to be paid by that business. And so I understand you're sole proprietor. So I'm going to unfortunately say no. That what's being paid, even though by you through your employer, wouldn't count. All I'm going to say though is that if that's an individual plan, because there are some small businesses that the employee goes out and gets their own individual plan, but it's just paid through the business. But I doubt, based on the fact that you said there's quite a bit of expense to it. So unfortunately, I'm going to say I would not include it in your cost because it's not related to the business.
Next question comes from Jeff, he is an EA and the owner of Blue Line Tax and Accounting Services. My question is, Joe Schmo made $50,000 net income as a single member LLC in 2019. Based on the calculation, Joe would qualify for a $10,417 PPP loan. Let's say Joe gets the loan and receives the funds to his business checking account from the bank. Joe then transfers the whole loan amount to his personal account as an owner's draw. Would that course of action still qualify the whole amount of the loan to be forgiven, or is proof needed as to what the payroll costs were used for?
So if I'm understanding, okay, the circumstances is that it's a single member LLC, self-employed, which I do know a single member LLC can be an S Corp, but I think the way that this was presented, it would be someone reporting their income on Schedule C as self-employed income.
Yeah.
And the short answer to that, based on what we know now, is they're keeping a separate bank account.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're not a separate entity, and you know as well as I do that yes, it's a quote unquote distributions, but when you have a sole proprietorship, it's not treated the same. So I think they're going to be fine. I do know that 75% is for payroll, 25% for the other expenses. So in terms of taking money out for themselves, it seems as though you're taking out that money, but I would limit it to the 75%, and then you have to leave the other 25%, I think, to go to the other expenses. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that you can spend more than on normal circumstances. You can spend more on your payroll. You don't have to, because it's at least 75%. But until further guidance with the self-employed, given that you're pulling it into a personal account, that might be where you side on the air of caution until we get further guidance. And hopefully they're getting enough money based on what you're saying, the 10K, that maybe they don't have to pull it out all day one. And I'm assuming once we get to April 10th and soon thereafter, we'll get guidance like we did from the SBA.
Yeah, and I just noticed that Jeff is online and he said thank you, so he heard your answer.
Yeah, you bet, Jeff. And EAs, so enrolled agents, in a lot of ways, they can be better and more experienced than CPAs. CPAs, we pass a test and it covers all kinds of subjects. With an EA, they have to take a specific test with the IRS that, in my opinion, is a more rigorous tax test compared to the tax portion of the CPA exam. So I have a lot of respect for EAs. I think they work hard and they get to represent their clients before the IRS. And so anyways, thanks for being on. Next.
Colleen North, I saw this on a site from a law firm that said once you apply for and are approved for a PPP loan, you can start using it whenever you like. Just note that once you start, you have 8 weeks to spend it in very specific ways. Please clarify. I thought that 8 weeks begins running when you receive the money.
So the law states that it begins when it's approved, not when it's received. And the reason for that is that everybody has a consistent start date, and then nobody is trying to say, well, I got it on the 3rd and it got approved on the 1st. So it's based on the approval date. So once you're approved, I mean, technically, if you don't, if you don't have the actual dollars that have arrived, anything you're spending in that time is going to count towards it. So if you're approved on, let's say April 8th, you don't get your money until the 13th. Well, money that you're spending on the 8th and the 9th, okay, is going to count towards your forgiveness. So I think that's the other reason that it's in play. But the law specifically states the date of approval. So I appreciate the question on that.
Okay, Linda Drum, is a single member LLC taxed as an 1120S considered self-employed for PPP and or EIDL? The SM LLC pays the single member owner W-2 wages, and the net earnings of the LLC go to the personal 1040.
Yeah, so great question. So single member LLC S Corp, thank you for clarifying. That really helps me know what set of circumstances that we are dealing with. By statute, the net income from an S corporation in box 1 or anywhere on that K1 is not, by statute, self-employment income. It's considered investment income, not portfolio income, but investment income. So it doesn't qualify as self-employment for any purposes, not subject to the tax, not subject to any kind of self-employment earnings, benefits such as retirement plan. All to say that 100% at the 1040 level, that S Corp owner will not be able to use those monies to then go and apply. What does count without a doubt is up to $100,000 of that S Corp owner's wages. You need to look carefully and make sure you're picking up box 5 of the S Corp owner's wages, because box 1, if the S Corp is paying health insurance premiums, box 1 is going to include those health insurance premiums. Under Chapter 24 of the Internal Revenue Code, when you add health insurance premiums to wages, it is not subject to withholdings. Therefore, under Chapter 24, it doesn't qualify as wages for the PPP, which is just another way of saying the most pure number to use is going to be box 5 of the W3 or line 5C, column 1 of the 941s, because it won't be affected by the 401k or other pre-tax retirement, and it won't include then, of course, the premium. So just be sure that it's only the wages. And then for the S Corp owner, of course, you get to include the health insurance. Even though it's being picked up as wages, you get to include that health insurance because you're not picking up box 1. So that's why you got to add it. The employer match, the clarification that came out yesterday from the SBA, which I don't really think should be the case, but it specifically states defined benefit plans. So, if you have a single member LLC and maybe you're the one of one owner or one of one employee, and you have a retirement plan, this is indicating that you would be able to include that as well. Just as a side note, if you get a K1 from a partnership, different set of circumstances than an S. So if you have an amount in box 4 or an amount in box 14, that's going to count. Now, I don't know, I'm not seeing any guidance on there, but I went through a PPP calculation with a client in their bank this morning, and that bank included the guaranteed payments at the entity level of the partnership to arrive at payroll costs. I've not seen that anywhere. I'm not saying it's incorrect, but yesterday I was indicating that that would be then self-employment income down at the individual level that would allow them to go and get a PPP at the individual level. So if you're going, well, which one is it, JJ? I would go with that partner of a partnership that's getting a K1. If there's a box 4 and there's a box 14, I would go and go and get that personally, because that's going to be on your Schedule SC, which is what the banks are needing to be using without further guidance.
All right, next question is, hello JJ, thanks for all your great and prompt videos. My business account is with BOFA. I was told that they would not do a PPP for me unless I had a business account and a business credit card. Do you know of any other bank that you would not have to have an account with that would do a PPP for a sole proprietor?
Yeah, so great question. And I think you're now the third person who's commented about that specific bank. And the big banks seem to be doing that. Wells Fargo announced Sunday night they're only going to do 10 billion, and I think they've run out, meaning they're not doing any more. Chase, I believe, is going with the same set of circumstances. So know this, I've seen a theme of the national, the larger size banks that are having to do that. And I think it's just a way to limit their, for lack of a better word, risk. So they have to have reserves to back loans that they have. So really, to answer your question, what I've not seen anywhere here in Oklahoma is any of the, regional banks, state banks, credit unions, SBA lenders. I've not heard of any of them doing that. In fact, I know of a number of banks here in Oklahoma, they're all local, that they're just taking people on that don't even have an account with them. So they're just setting up a business account with them on the spot, making them a customer, and then doing the PPP loan.
Brian McClennans, I just saw your comment, so I'll tell JJ. Bank asked me if I was a CPA because of what I had learned from you. I filed perfectly. I said no, but I learned my facts from JJ the CPA.
Well, good. I'm so glad to get that feedback, and I'm glad it helped, because I'm sure it got you through. I've got a lot of respect for those that are doing a lot of that work themselves to try and get it. So hopefully that money comes soon. Keep us posted, and hope you're doing safe.
All right, this is from Moore Hurd. Am I clear that a sole proprietor, in parentheses barber, no employees with a Schedule C can be approved for 2.5 times the average monthly wage, but that only your actual monthly wage will be forgiven?
Yeah, so, okay, so the pillars of America, right? We live our lives one haircut to another. I was in a show 30-something when I was 19 years old. I loved this show called 30-something. But anyways, it was Elliot that said that. Long story short, with our barbers, on those circumstances that you just indicated, based on what we know today, which I think will stick, it'll be based on the net. That's your payroll cost, okay? But make sure on Schedule 1 of your Form 1040, okay, is called adjustments to income. So if you're paying any health insurance, as a self-employed individual, that's where you should be deducting it, is on Schedule 1. It would say self-employed health insurance. So make sure you're grabbing that amount. And then if also on Schedule 1, you are deducting any kind of self-employed, retirement plan, IRA or SEP or whatever, you're going to be able to add that. You aren't paying any state unemployment taxes, of course. So you're going to grab all three of those numbers, okay? Divided by 12 times 2.5, that's the amount that you can borrow. But then of what you borrow, you still get to use it in the same manner as everybody else, which is the rent, utilities, which include telephone, the internet, as well as if you're funding part of your retirement, which would be 2/12 that you'd be able to do, paying for your health insurance. And then the jury's still out on how someone will be able to substantiate as a self-employed individual that it went to them. And so it's like, well, do I just write myself a check? And I guess right now I would say yes. I did want to just verify that in Section 1106 of the Act, it indicates that the covered period means the 8-week period beginning on the date of the origination of a covered loan. So the only reason I'm saying that is I know that our wonderful attorneys are are good at what they do. But I wanted to clarify, the person who had the question on when it starts, it's clear in 1106 A3 that it's on the date of origination, which means approval.
Okay, and this is from Jay Gilman, and in regards to PPP loan forgiveness, we have already laid off more than half our staff. Our bank is telling us in order to receive 100% loan forgiveness, our FTE count needs to be 75% or more of the 2019 monthly average FTE during the 8-week period following the loan orientation. If it's less than 75%, then the loan is prorated. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, you're spot on with your understanding. That's a great bank to know that. The banks are not caught up with that at all. Let's see. So if you're in a situation where you have a bank, I'll just say as a side note, because there are a few banks saying, how are you going to spend this? And if they're saying, hey, you've already, I see a Treadmore. Is that Russell?
Yeah, that is Russell.
JJ for president. What's up, Russell? But if you have a bank that's indicating to you, hey, listen, because I know this isn't your question, but if you have a bank saying, hey, based on your projection here, or based on the fact that you've told us that you let go some of your staff, we're not going to be able to approve the full amount, is an absolute fallacy. I'm not going to say that the bank's breaking the law, so to speak. That's not allowed. That's not all. They have to know is, here's your payroll costs, including all the things that are related to it, divided by 12 times 2.5. That's what you qualify for. What you do or don't do, you don't know yet. Okay. And I have a hunch that we're going to see what will change is that it'll probably go from 8 weeks to 10 weeks or 12 weeks to make sure that this money is still around when businesses open back up. But that understanding was spot on.
This one is 2 questions, and it's from Samuel Alexander. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Appreciate your dedication to help us. I own a small business. I applied for PPP and EIDL. Questions are, 2019, I had 5 employees. 2020, 2 employees are part-time. The funds I received from PPP, how do I decide which employee gets how much money?
Just real quick, Roselle LLC said that, in fact, Mr. Trump has delayed his press conference because we're live here, because we're taking care of good Americans that are wanting to make sure they're doing everything correctly. That's what I love about this. And hey, if you don't mind, I'm just going to say, we'd love it if you'd subscribe. Just take a minute to click. I know sometimes it's a pain because you got to log in or whatever, but take it as the advantage that I think you'll get notifications as we're trying to keep stuff on the front side. So the question is, do you have to make a decision on what employees you pay? And the answer is no. It's an overall payroll cost. I do know that there's terminology in 1106. That's where you would want to look as it relates to the forgiveness, is in this section 1106. And I will start doing more videos after this week about the forgiveness and a worksheet on how to, maybe project what the forgiveness is going to be. But right now we've been concentrating on just helping everybody maybe have all the facts and circumstances to be able to get theirs. But when you look at in the, let's see, D and 3 and 4 and 5 of this 1106, not that you're necessarily wanting to dig into it, but basically what you're looking at here is the head count, and then there's a salary amount, and then there's percentages, but it's not based on specific employees. And so it does allow you to just make the best decision you can make as a business owner on what's best for you and your business, and then with your employees. So there's not a tracking of your employees specifically. It's an overall, and it's a head count, because at the end of the day, if you have a business that they're paying people, that's really the main goal here.
Okay, and then Samuel's other question is, I run the business from my house. Other than payroll, what else can I use the PPP funds for so it's forgiven?
What's going to be interesting on this is and I'm throwing out something. I'm throwing out an idea that I've not heard of. I've not read about it. I don't know if this will be the case. But for those circumstances, for the self-employed that are working at home, if you're able to take, and I know it doesn't usually amount to much, but if you're able to take a home office deduction, my hunch is, which I have no authority, I'm not seeing anything on it, but my hunch would be that by the time we're getting to loan forgiveness time, right? Because we know there's going to be a number of things that'll probably come out in the coming weeks that further defines things related to forgiveness. But it might be that whatever you're able to deduct as your the business use of your home, that'd be prorated, be 2/12 of it, might be something that can be allocated. So as self-employed, you still can do the utilities. Now understand on that, right? You don't have separate utilities. So that would be as part of the home office expense, which I understand is not a lot, but then it does include your health insurance. It does include retirement plan match, which for self-employed, we know there's not a match. It's just an amount that you put in. And so what's interesting though with the self-employed, and I'm looking forward to guidance on this, and I hate to say it, but it's almost like the self-employed have been treated a little bit like a stepchild. And I was a stepchild, so I can say that, but they're treated a little bit like a stepchild in that, there's probably more self-employed individuals than there are employers with employees. Okay. And so the fact that we don't have more information is going to hamper our self-employed individuals getting their loans starting on Friday. First of all, just not knowing what information do we technically need. So with that being said, remember this, that if you get a PPP, you can use more than what you got on payroll, okay? Meaning, you can use more than 75% on the payroll, right? It's not only up to 75%. It's just that you have to look at it at the inverse. You can't spend more than 25% on these other expenses to get it forgiven. And so the reason I'm saying that is that for a self-employed individual, in your circumstances, it'll be interesting to see is, does it just in essence automatically get forgiven in the sense of that was your net? And so maybe you're going to come out ahead. And so the reason I'm saying this is that maybe that's where the self-employed will be a little extra victorious. Yeah. Is because of this.
Okay, this next one is from Chung Winter. I have an S Corp. When I filed taxes this year, my CPA gave me an 1120S for my S Corp filing and a 1040 for my personal filing. Which form and which income number am I using to determine my monthly income X divided by 12? Thanks for all your hard work.
Hey, you bet, and thank you for that question. And I really appreciate all the details because that helps give a concise answer, specific. And the short answer is it won't be related. It won't be on your 1040 because the K1 that you're getting on that S Corp is considered investment income, meaning it's not self-employed, it's not earned income. So it would be up at the S Corp level, and then it would only be based on the wages that you paid, like W-2 wages that you paid. So you're going to take that, no more than 100,000. You're going to look at box 5 of that W-2. You'll add it to, maybe they said they didn't have employees. Either way, if you have employees or not, you're included in that. And then at the S Corp level, the health insurance, the retirement plan match, any state unemployment tax. So only at the S Corp and then only based on wages.
Lee Clark. Hi, JJ. I am a self-employed independent contractor and file Schedule C. If my Schedule C net is less than $100,000, I assume I would max out my PPP request at $20,833. My question is, if at the end of 2020, if my Schedule C net is still less than $100,000 before any PPP loan, will they still consider my loan for forgiveness?
Yes. So just I really love the detail. This is what I like about the fact that we posted this video and said, hey, post your questions here, because that allows kind of this people to write a detailed question. And so know this, if you've asked the question in this live feed and we're not able to get to it, because of time constraints. Yesterday I went for 3 hours and 46 minutes and 46 seconds. Is there a way that we can see these comments later?
These comments will remain here, and then what we will do is whatever questions we can't get to tonight, we will try to get to these first thing tomorrow, just like we've done today.
Yeah. So to the Schedule C question, if your net is less than 100,000, then you would be able to include whatever it is that you got divided by 12 times 2.5. But you also, get to add to that your health insurance, which is on Schedule 1.
Lee is correcting me. It should have read greater than 100,000, not less than.
Okay.
My bad. Sorry.
Okay. So you'll be able to include the 100,000. Yeah, max. Okay. So yeah, I wondered how you got your figure. Now I'm getting it. Okay. So it's up to 100, but remember, you'll be able to then add on top of that what's on Schedule 1 if you have it, but that's the self-employed health insurance premiums. And then any kind of retirement that you've done in the last 12 months. And, what'll be interesting on the banks is, are they going to rely on the last 12 months? Are they going to go with calendar year 19? So I believe they can do either, based on the SBA coming out yesterday and saying for wages, it can be either or. So what you might want to look at is what do you want to include? Now, it sounds like, if you've already maxed over the 100, then obviously that wouldn't matter on the P&L. But what you might look at is that if your health insurance, went up in this 2020, maybe it'd be better to include the last 12 months of health insurance. And then on your retirement plan, remember, it's got to be what you've done by February 15th of this year for it to really kind of stick. But just make sure that when you're looking at those things, that you're including not only that, but you're looking at what time frame you're going to want to include there.
Okay, this one's a long question from Frank.
What's up, Frank?
Thanks, JJ, for all the great information. You have generally said it is not a great idea to accept both PPP and EIDL. We are restaurant owners and have applied for both. We have not received either. And looking to the future of reopening, we will have some large costs, $100,000 per month, as far as food and liquor that will need to be paid for immediately.
Wow.
Sorry, it moved on me. And need to be paid immediately. With everyone so focused on payroll, is anyone else considering the magnitude of these other expenses and specifically how they will be paid? Would it be a bad idea to accept the EIDL money and use it specifically for the expense and use PPP for payrolls, utilities, and rent? If not, how would you suggest meeting this need of lack of working capital that I'm sure other businesses will need as well? Additionally, God forbid this ever happens again with the terms of the EIDL being so favorable, would it be possible and a good idea to park some money for a future disaster? Finally, I have to admit I have never met a CPA even a little bit like you, and you probably have never met a restaurant owner like me.
I love it. I love it. Well, God bless you, because our restaurants are I talked about the barbers, but our restaurants have really become such an important part of not only the economy, but our social life. I don't think I've ever eaten at home as many days in a row as I have now since I was a poor kid growing up in Malik Terrace. But all that to be said, thanks for sticking with it. I know whatever it is that you're having to do for your employees, I'm sure they appreciate it. This is absolutely the quandary that we are in. And as an employer, is all the other costs, and especially with the restaurant industry, with heavy costs and unfortunately heavy waste potential, and heavy labor costs. I know that, sometimes restaurants are like, oh, they just pay everybody, a couple bucks an hour. Yeah, but they're paying them, throughout the day. There's different rates that come into play, the chef, all that kind of stuff. Anyways, all I'm saying is, yes, there's a ton. So here's where we are right now. So you went with the EIDL and you went with the PPP. Understand it. They're for the same purpose, but you hit the nail on the head. You're one of the unique industries, that as long as you can show that you spent your EIDL money not on payroll, and you're one of these unique industries, and I don't put it in the videos because it's too hard to explain. So I just say, restaurant owners, you're in that unique industry with your inventory, right? If you were to specifically, and I don't know if that's, you talk with your accountant on how to actually really make it clear that that 10 grand or whatever it is that you got went towards those costs and not towards payroll. But because it's going to inventory, so with the EIDL, what they ask for is, what are your costs of goods sold? And that's one of the reasons is that you have that amount. So I'm glad that you did it. You went against the grain of what you read everywhere, but that's why you're an entrepreneur and successful. Now, as it relates to the additional cost, I just make a side note that I do feel like two things. One, as it relates to the payroll, I feel like they've got to extend it to beyond 8 weeks, partly because there's been a minor delay in getting it, even though they're working very hard and it's lightning fast, in my opinion, compared to other things. But then as we're looking at these other costs, not at all am I thinking we're going to be able to count on other help, okay? But I do think if there's another wave of help, which we're already hearing about, CARES 2, mm-hmm. I think it would be for the employer. Mm-hmm. So not at all am I saying that this isn't fair, so to speak, but this money that the small businesses or the businesses of 500 or less employees are getting is for the employees. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, if you're an owner and you've put yourself on payroll, you're going to be included in that. But as an owner, that might cover what you need to take care of your personal responsibilities, maybe. But that business owner is sitting there with all the other expenses, and you just named a couple that's just related to cost of goods sold. So we know we're having the rent, and we have the utilities, and we have the health insurance, and we have the mortgage or business interest. But I'm just saying a hunch would be on CARES 2 that it might be more of a loan, maybe not a forgivable, but an easy automatic ATM. Here you go. You are going to have to pay this back, but there are going to be a number of businesses that are going to need help like that, especially in the restaurant industry. So, let us know where you're at. We travel the country. We'd love to come and be patrons of your restaurant. Thanks for tuning in and appreciate the support.
All right, Lee Clark, we just answered his question, but he said he feels he was misunderstood.
Okay.
I make over 100,000. Is it better to apply for PPP or unemployment? I'm a 1099 miscellaneous, no employees, and payroll costs will be paying myself directly.
Understood. So PPP, because unemployment is going to be week to week. It's not even available yet. Supposedly we're going to go online. Yes, it's for 39 weeks, but we might be back up and at them in 4 weeks, 6 weeks. And I understand what you're saying, but based on your circumstances, if you have self-employment income, that's meant to be there to help you get through as well. So unless we find different guidance, so here's what I might suggest. It's the 7th, it's Tuesday. If you could hold off for a few days, I'm hoping that we have guidance by Friday, on Friday, or Monday. But I will tell you this, based on what I read with the SBA, and it was a pretty straightforward article. I'm not sure how I can get to it right now. But anyways, it didn't give anything further than, it didn't act like it was new information. It didn't say, hey, effective. It just said for the EIDL, it's 1,000 an employee. Right? So you may very well apply and only get $1,000 because you're the quote unquote only employee, the only person in that business. And then at best, you're going to get 10 grand. So I would do the PPP, see what guidance we have, but I definitely think you're going to get more related to that. And I'm assuming that's probably a better option, is to get more to support you and your business.
This one is from Deepa Patel. What if we get the PPP and start paying our employees again, but then our businesses are not allowed to officially open by June 30th? Would my forgiveness amount be in jeopardy because my business isn't open? Any recommendations for businesses that may not be able to open until July or August? Thanks.
So great question. I haven't heard it from that angle, so I appreciate that. And I appreciate the person that wanted some clarification to their questions, because it's
He said, thanks, JJ, you rock.
You bet. Because the reason I'm wanting to do it the way that we're doing it, trying to do is efficient, is to really get a true answer to those that have the question. So I appreciate that. So opening or not doesn't have any effect on the forgiveness. What it comes down to is, did you pay the employees within that 8-week period? So even if the employees weren't there, your business was closed, and you paid your employees, then you're going to get that forgiveness. It won't be contingent on whether your business opened or not. The quandary there is, as I've been talking with other business owners, is, well, what happens if I might wait a little bit? My employees are on unemployment, and I would like, this would be a small business owner saying, I'd like to wait until I open my doors so that I then have payroll, because not every business has money coming in the door, right? To our friend that has a restaurant, I mean, okay, you're open the first night, you've brought money in the door, but that's certainly not enough for all the front costs that you need. So really, at the end of the day, I think that all we can do is, if you qualify for the PPP, get it, go get it, hold on to it. If you're unsure, then the best course of action is just hold on to it. You can't really use it for other purposes. Use it for the payroll, but if you're choosing not to have your employees paid and they're going with the unemployment, then you can kind of wait and see. Because really, remember, at the end of this, if you go through a scenario and you go, well, I got the PPP and then I shut my business down the next day, I mean, it's a terrible circumstance, then all you can do, you just pay the money back, right? So it's just better to have it. It's like, I've used this example several times, mom, dad, or grandma, or grandpa, when we were kids, like, hey, here's $20, go to the movies, right? You wouldn't say, well, you wouldn't say, well, I'm not sure if I'm going to the movies. I'm not sure if the ticket's going to cost this. You just take the 20 and then go spend what it is that you need. And then when you come home, then, grandpa or grandma would probably be the one that says it before your parents, which is, hey, where's my change?
Yeah. This one is from Yogurt Baby. I'm a sole proprietor, but my net income divided by 12 by 2.5 is barely enough to cover 1 month's rent. Is there any way to apply for more than my payroll times 2.5? I have applied for an EIDL, but that doesn't seem very promising considering my COG is 0 because the business is service-based.
Oh, it's service-based? It's yogurt?
Yeah, that's just the name.
Oh, that's just the name. Okay.
I don't know if that's what they do.
So if you're getting low funds, based on what you said, the one thing to note is that if you're getting the EIDL and you get the money and then you've spent it all, you can then go get PPP. What they're wanting to avoid is that you're getting these things concurrently. So if you've gotten the EIDL, then just sit tight, wait for it, get it, and then when you've used that up, then go and get the PPP. And then get both in that circumstance. But that's really what it comes down to.
Matthew Davis just said Trump just announced an extra $250 billion for the PPP program. So,
see, I talked to him earlier. I was like,
yeah.
Listen. Now, the thing to note on that, that's great. Someone commented on that?
That was Matthew Davis.
All right, thank you, Matthew Davis. 250 billion. So the thing to note is, we all know, the president said that. Whatever your opinion of him is irrelevant. But right, that's got to go through Congress. I'll be honest with you. I wish they'd wait. And I'm gonna go back to our friends that own the restaurant. Is maybe it is going to run out. Maybe we don't have to wait till it actually runs out. But there might be other purposes needed here. I'm going to be on tonight with Graham Ledger. His show is called The Ledger, The Daily Ledger on OAN, One American Network. Seth Denson is responsible for getting me connected with that and gave me some good tips. But anyways, I had my first interview and I'll be on tonight. It's at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And one of the things that we talked about was, all the money that's being given out. And one of my comments was there's a lot of duplication going on. And, I've gotten questions. In fact, I got one right before we went live here from somebody that just got the EIDL today. They're self-employed, and they said, hey, should I go ahead and apply for federal unemployment? Well, right now, the short answer is you can, right? You can do both. But at the end of the day, whatever it is that you're getting from unemployment, if you're getting EIDL, if you're getting PPP, that's meant for wages, including you as a self-employed. So in my opinion, you would get unemployment when your PPP or your EIDL is spent. So the reason I'm going through all that is I feel like you want to do these one at a time. And I understand it's kind of like a pinata that's been hit and the candy's all over there. And you go into a panic mode because we're in a panic mode, and you just start grabbing and pushing Sally away to grab the Tootsie Rolls as well as the Snickers, etc. But the way this is designed to go through it is to do one program at a time. So whatever you started the roller coaster on, go to the next one, and then I would say unemployment would be after that.
This is from Jace Campbell, new hire. If a contractor joins my company as a W-2 employee when I receive the PPP, is that new employee's payroll eligible for forgiveness as long as he or she remains hired until June 30th, all else being paid? Are there any limitations to new hires that we should all be aware of?
Yeah, great question on that. So the short answer is that when you're looking at your overall payroll cost that you applied for, that's the maximum that would be able to be forgiven. Raises are not going to count. So I know that I said earlier they're not tracking by employee, but there's got to be something when we go in for forgiveness for them to either ask you to certify, but you can't just pay raises. I know that's not what you're asking, so I'll get to that part, but you can't pay raises to then try and make up for paying out your payroll. But when you're hiring somebody new, if you haven't let anybody go or no one's left, okay, and you just have a new hire on top of that, that's not going to help your forgiveness, because what they're talking about doing here is maintaining the payroll. Now, that ultimately may be different and changed and expanded because the whole purpose of the PPP is to pay payroll. But what the intention of the Paychecks Protection Program was to maintain, not necessarily help a business grow, even though that's great and that's the American way. So all to say is that if it's a replacement, and in 1106 section of this, it talks about, and the terminology, if you want to dive into it, is I don't know if I can find it quick enough, but there's a rehire and then a replacement. So I think the way that I would say this is, if they're replacing somebody, okay, then it's going to count. If they're helping you with your head count, so to speak, that's going to count. It's just that you can't add it on. You can't create new to try and improve the forgiveness, which I think ultimately that may not be the case, but based on how the law reads, that's my understanding.
All right.
Great question.
Greg Parker. I'm a single member LLC. From what I can tell, and correct me if I'm wrong, I would be considered like a sole proprietor for tax purposes, which I would assume would be the same for PPP. I have heard you say numerous times that sole proprietors can sign up on April 10th. According to the SBA, sole proprietors could begin on April 3rd. Self-employed and independent contractors begin on April 10th. So confusing. What is a SM LLC actually considered, and when do we apply?
Wow, you know what? That's a great slicing up. I know. Yeah, because the tax law is sliced up into finite, and I've been noting that there are 3 different classifications when we're talking about kind of normally just the self-employed. They did say they're filing Schedule C, right?
Yeah.
So at the top of that application, the one that came out on Friday the 3rd, there's a category for independent contractor, self-employed, or sole proprietorship. And that may be why. I've not read that anywhere. Doesn't mean that I may have just missed it. But here's what I would say is probably comes down to the bank. I would say this: if you're a single member LLC, you would be a sole proprietor. Sole proprietor, I mean, it's really, we're splitting hairs, so to speak, but given that there's 3 classifications based on what we do know so far, meaning just the history of defining these businesses, so to speak, back to college, a sole proprietor would be like one step ahead of a home-based business. And I'm not at all knocking home-based businesses here, but if you're a single member LLC and you're working out of your home, doesn't mean you're not a sole proprietor. But sole proprietor is more, you probably have employees, you have maybe more of a public presence of a business. An independent contractor is probably, very little overhead potentially. They're doing things that maybe really other employees are doing, but they're doing it for multiple individuals. And then you're self-employed. I feel like really self-employed and sole proprietor would be very, very similar, but self-employed would probably be you haven't formalized anything. So that's why I would say, and so I'd say this: get with your bank, click, check that box for sole proprietor. Absolutely think you meet that definition. Get your numbers, get your documents, and get in line first. Worst case scenario, they say, for sole proprietors, it's Friday the 10th, but you'd be first in line for that. But I'd get after it. Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that info.
And this was the second part of Greg Harper's question. Are retirement funds I made to a 401k I created for my company considered in the payroll expenses? I'm confused about the match part.
So the amount that is withheld from wages, the answer is no. The amount that would be your contribution. So I may have misspoken earlier because I said if you put money into an IRA, we'd have to make sure that qualifies. I think it will, but match would be in a traditional setting what the employer pays. So as an individual sole proprietor, Schedule C filer, okay, if you're doing a SEP, okay, that's employer contributed. That's not based on like a wage. If you're doing an IRA, that's not necessarily tied. So the IRA might be a little bit in the gray area. I don't know that we're going to get any clarification on that. But the short answer to that is what is on Schedule 1 for the self-employed line item, which is different than the IRA. I would include that amount if you're self-employed. If you have employees, then include the match. And then, at this point, I hate to say it, but there's nothing in here about the IRA. If you're doing an IRA as well, right? Not on your spouse that's not a part of the business, ask the bank. I mean, this might be one that we're waiting. So I've got a number of bankers that they have me on speed dial, that when there's more guidance on self-employed, that they're going to get that to us.
All right. Alexis Hornsby, is there a way to cancel your EIDL loan application if you have since determined that PPP is more beneficial for you? I have not been contacted by anyone yet regarding my application for EIDL, but my bank has indicated that my PPP application has been approved by the SBA, not funded yet.
Okay. If you're on, did the bank have you reduce down your PPP by the amount, of what you got or what you think you're going to get on the EIDL? Let's see if they give an answer to that.
Okay.
The next question.
This is from the Catalinga project. For PPP app, what is the difference between sole proprietor without employees and eligible self-employed? Also, for self-employed and sole proprietors without employees, what should the number of employees be? 0 or 1? Thank you in advance.
Yeah, you bet. Great question. So they're saying both of them are self-employed though, right? Like both circumstances.
Yeah.
So the answer would, so if you have no W-2 employees, because a sole proprietor, self-employed, even an independent contractor, they can have employees. We all know that, right? So assuming you don't have any other W-2 employees, then you would, yes, put number of employees as 1. And as it relates to, what was the first part of that?
For PPP app, what is the difference between sole proprietor with employees and eligible self-employed?
Yeah, I think it's, when they wouldn't have known we had that other question, but I would probably just say, you know, sole proprietor, if you've got an LLC, you have a federal tax ID number, you're maybe more formalized, so to speak. If you have a public presence, you probably would then be more classic definition of a sole proprietor. And then the self-employed is probably just not as formal. But at the end of the day, if you check with the bank, that might be the way to go. And, you know, maybe just err on the side of checking it sole proprietor. You don't have any employees, so you base it on the net, get your application into the bank now, given that sole proprietors were able to do that starting on the 3rd. Go ahead and get it in now. Hopefully that answered it.
Frederick Lowe, do auto lease payments count as rent? And what about payments to a storage facility for business equipment and client files? Thank you again, JJ.
So Frederick was the one that woke up and had a nightmare.
Yes.
And we were supposed to answer his question first.
Yes.
So I hope Frederick's on. Okay, so that's a phenomenal question because I hadn't thought about an auto lease. I'm going to go with, yeah. Well, I'm going to go with no, because when they talk about the definition of a lease, I don't believe it meets that definition, although that is technically rent if you think about the nature of it. But I do believe that is to, yeah, so it says rent, including rent under a lease agreement. So I think that that would not qualify, but it just says rent. And so the fact that it doesn't say lease, and when you, you know, there are differences between a lease and a rental, you know that, right? You go to the airport, you rent a car, and if you take possession of it for 3 years, that's a lease. So I don't think it would qualify. I like the thought process. And then I do believe on the storage unit, absolutely would count. Because in essence, you just don't have enough room for, you know, so to speak, at wherever your one office is. So in essence, it'd be like a second office. And so I do believe that the fact that you have business items in there and files, that would count.
Alexis Hornsby, the one you asked her the question about if they made her, she said, no, it did not. And she said, we are also a restaurant. So I heard you mention getting both the PPP and the EIDL for restaurants. So should I not cancel it?
Yeah, that's why I'm glad we followed up.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't cancel it. And by the way, I don't know of any way to cancel it. If you get the money, I wouldn't even know how you return it. If you've gotten the money before you knew it, before you knew about these things, hold on to your EIDL, because your 8 weeks starts ticking on your PPP. Use up the PPP, get through the 8 weeks, and then you can get to the EIDL. But if you're a restaurant, okay, you have that cost of goods sold, right? So related to your food cost. Now, I know that labor can be considered part of cost of goods sold, but you're not going to be able to do it for EIDL purposes. But if the EIDL is covering these other expenses that are not payroll because you have cost of goods sold on these other items, then don't cancel it, and then just try your best to really show that it went specific to that, whether, you know, your food costs. So that's probably just a, you know, in your accounting system, your QuickBooks or something to that effect. At the end of the day, it needs to be that, you know, here's what I got on EIDL and here's what I deemed it went towards.
This is from Dudley Beatty. Thanks so much for all your help. This has been very informative. Probably a dumb question, but I am just not getting it. I use QuickBooks. I do know when I receive my PPP loan, I will put that in as a liability. What I do not understand is how you will link it to your expenses of payroll taxes, rent, employee retirement contribution, health insurance payments by employer, etc. So it will decrease the liability. Please explain.
Yeah, so I will be doing a video on that once we get into forgiveness, but I think because you follow the fact that the money came in, right? So debits and credits, right? So the money comes in, you debit cash and you credit the liability, or in QuickBooks, right? You're coding that deposit to your liability. So in QuickBooks, for example, when you're going to pay that health insurance during that 8-week period, instead of picking health insurance as the account, you'll pick that liability account, which will also help at the end to go, well, here's my liability, here's everything I spent it on, here's my receipts and check copies and bank statements to substantiate it, here you go. So you already built yourself a nice little report. So just instead of selecting the payroll or the insurance or the match or the rent or the utilities as your expense, you would select the liability. Now, because I think you're following this, I do have a couple of clients that the way we're actually going to do this, because we are wanting to, for comparative purposes, know, well, what really was the rent for 2020? What really was the amount of, salaries and whatnot? So in QuickBooks, we have the other section down at the very, very bottom. So there's a couple of them. And I understand it's on the P&L, right? But for tax purposes, it won't be on the P&L. This is for management purposes. But down below, we'll have a little section and we'll record the money that came in and then all the expenses so that we can see that. But then for tax return purposes, that's just going to zero itself out just the same as if the liability. So it adds some complexity there. Okay, I understand that. I think the simplest thing to do is just what you said, liability, and then code it to liability.
Definitely just commented and said, tell him thanks, I get it now, and
okay,
it is the best.
Perfect. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And thanks to someone that's going to track that in QuickBooks, because I'll definitely make it easy.
This is from David Quater. Do employers' workers' comp costs percentage of payroll count towards calculating payroll costs for PPP loan? In other words, can workers' comp employer costs be added to increase the amount of the PPP loan?
Yes. No, it does not count. It's only health insurance. I have some banks that are including dental and vision because it's a health benefit. The clients, I don't have that many clients that buy that insurance, a few. And so I've included it. And then I just said, tell your bank that we're including these other two items. And the banks have allowed it, except one. They didn't allow for whatever reason, the vision. But on the work comp, okay, so that doesn't fall into the category of the health insurance, of course. And then I understand, when we're reading about self-employment tax, not self-employment tax, state unemployment tax, but what it indicates here is payment of state and local tax assessed on the compensation of employees. So work comp insurance is not calculated in that manner. Long story short, work comp insurance would not be included. And that's been a common question, by the way.
And this is from Toyville Ltd. My company applied for the employee retention credit. Please explain the refund payment method for the advanced credits from Form 7200. At the moment, live assistance is not available from the IRS. I do not understand why they would close the phone lines when new policies have been implemented and current guidelines are extremely vague.
So in the simplest way to look at it is whatever you get as credits will reduce down your payroll cost that counts for forgiveness. Get the credits, okay? Go ahead and get the credits, because remember, you may have a quote unquote reduction down of your payroll, but you very well may be in a circumstance where you have just enough to make your payroll. Stated another way, let's say that you get $100,000, okay, on your PPP, which means that 75,000 of it can go to payroll costs. You got to remember, payroll costs is not just the wages, right? We know the payroll cost is the health insurance, the retirement match, and the state unemployment taxes. So when you're indicating the tax credit portion, let's say that you got 100, you have 75 for payroll, and you only spent 75 for payroll. You spent 25 on the other. To the penny, you spent the 100 exactly the way that it's supposed to. So you're thinking, oh, I bet everything's been forgiven. Okay. Well, if you got $2,000 in tax credits, then of your 75, okay, only 73 of it will be forgiven because you got a $2,000 tax credit. But here's how it's remedied. This is why I say go get your tax credits. Is it then almost, gives you another $2,000 to spend on payroll, right? Because remember, you're going to walk in and go, hey, here's all my payroll for my 8 weeks, and here's all of my employer costs related to that. Here's my rent. Here's my utilities. You do have the match, the breakout of the 75 and the 25. But getting the credits, what they're indicating is, okay, you got the credit, but see, you didn't pay that money. That's why it's not counting as forgiveness. Because you could walk into the bank examiner and say, hey, here's my 941s or whatever it is that you're going to substantiate it. And they're going to go, okay, but did you get any tax credits? Because if you did, that's money you didn't pay in dollar for dollar. And that's where some of this confusion came in when chapter 21, 22, and 24 were included. So here's where I'm at on that. Get your credits. Now, you know what's interesting? I looked several times on that form 7200 that you're bringing up. And the 7200 is the form that you complete and you fax it to the IRS. And that is, okay, I didn't have enough tax to absorb my credit, or I forgot to take my credit when I paid in my tax. And so I'm sending in this form to you, IRS, and it's in every payroll period. And then they're supposed to give you money back, but they haven't, there's nowhere on there to put a direct deposit. It doesn't say, do they mail you a check? So I'm just guessing they mail you a check, because even though you pay payroll taxes, you'd think they have your bank account. They may not have it because it's not a two-way street there. Let's see, what was the beginning of that question?
My company applied for the employee retention credit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So thank you. So just know on the employee retention credit, right? That's going to be 50% of whatever you pay that person with 10,000 max. So the reason you want to have the credits is there's also a secondary item going on here. Okay. If we get to the 8 weeks and you've spent all your money and you've also got credits, from an economic standpoint, you have some money later. So take advantage of both. I understand it does affect the forgiveness, okay? But it also gives you more money because you've paid in less. It actually gives you economically more money to pay your employees or pay these other expenses. And it's kind of one of those where you take the credits, you keep paying what you're supposed to be paying. You can't give people raises. And then you kind of let the chips fall where they may. But to make sure the chips fall where they may properly, you want to take the credits.
This one is from Jethos, and he's from Talcott, Oklahoma.
All right.
Hey, JJ, can you please go over the strategies and how we can combine them, PPP and EIDL? Thanks. Oh, and David Quater, the one we answered the question, said thank you for answering my question and everything you're doing to help.
You bet. Thank you, David. So the strategy is one at a time. And if you're a restaurant and you have cost of goods sold, then you can get the EIDL to use for cost of goods sold, as long as you're able to really kind of show very specifically it did not go to payroll costs. So with my clients, I'm mostly working with clients that do not have cost of goods sold, as in maybe one of them, okay? No cost of goods sold, all service industry. So there's no way that they can do an EIDL and pretend like it went to something else other than payroll. So if you've already got the EIDL, don't get me wrong, 10K, if you got it, that's a lot of money, right? That's a lottery. Someone's getting excited when they pull the lever at the casino and 10K comes out, right? That's a fair amount of money, but in reality, that money can go quick. So for somebody that already got the EIDL, hold tight. The funds that you got for the EIDL, use them for those purposes, and then go get the PPP. So the strategy is more just one thing at a time. And for those that are self-employed, it would be the unemployment at the last part of it.
This is from West Michigan Glass Coatings.
Okay.
Our S Corp uses one independent contractor. The contractor receives a 1099 from our S Corp. We will still use the services of this independent contractor without interruption, which means that the IC will not be impacted by the economic downturn with regard to services provided to our S Corp. So then can we use those payroll costs in our payroll cost calculation?
Unfortunately, no. What the SBA made clear, not only Friday, and if you go to my website here, and the website that I have, JJ the CPA Help, is a free website. And when I say free, I don't mean wink, wink, put in your email address and I send you a free information to then email you later. It's literally free. But anyways, if you go to jjthecpahelp.com on the main page, down near the bottom, it's the SBA frequently asked questions that came out yesterday, and then also the SBA guidance we got on April 3rd, Friday. But in both of those, it clearly states, regardless of the circumstances, that you will not be able to include that individual or that company or whatever you want to call it, that you're paying as a 1099 in your costs. And then you're right, if that person is going to continue to be paid, then they would not qualify to go and get either an EIDL or a PPP. But that's wonderful that you're doing that for them, and they, I'm sure, feel very appreciative that you are doing that, and unfortunately you won't be able to include it.
Ken Chapman, I laid off 11 employees on March 16th.
That's tough.
If I'm reading this section in the bill right, it looks like if I got PPP, as long as I rehired them by June 29th and returned them to their regular wages, the loan is forgiven, even though I didn't use it up yet and they just started back.
Yeah, great question, and sorry for those circumstances. Last week it still chokes me up, but I had two different businesses, and one of them, we're talking through how do we make these decisions about employees, and they ultimately just decided they're all just done. They were just like, we can't decide what employee stays and doesn't. We can't afford it. We don't have anything. Anyways, that night I just wept for them. It broke my heart, and so that's a tough circumstance as a fellow employer, right? Your employees are counting on you, but also I don't mean like, well, that's life, as in, well, tough luck. All I'm saying is that's tough for everybody. So when you're looking at head count, that is this. It's assuming you spent all the money, okay? Because if you hadn't spent it, then that's the first indicator that it will not be forgiven. So let's look at it from the circumstance that you were able to get $75,000. You were able to get $100,000, okay? So you got PPP for $100K. You can use 25 of that for rent, utilities, mortgage interest, telephone, and the internet. The $75,000 goes to payroll costs. Payroll costs includes not only the payroll, but the employer match and the employer paid health insurance, as well as the SUTA. Here's why I'm telling you this. If you get $100K, you spend your 25 grand, and everybody comes back to work at the end of June. Did you get me one? I need a little something. So might do a V8. Thank you. But anyways, let's say they come back at the end of June, and you've got, technically you have your 75 that you haven't spent, and you spend 10 of it. Okay, so you spent your 25 on these other expenses. Of your 75, you spent 10. Without a doubt, 65 will not be forgiven. So the head count thing is from the standpoint of, did you spend all your money, but then you laid everybody off after the 8 weeks, which is kind of punitive, because if the employer did all they could and paid everybody, but they don't have those same employees around at the end of June, then there's going to be Okay, you still spent it, but you didn't do it correctly. We had this, did we read this? JJ might have missed it, but can you tell me if a sole proprietor fined 1040 Schedule C uses gross or net? Was that someone that asked?
No.
Okay, sorry. What? Sorry, I thought you were correcting it, but for everybody's going to be like, you're answering out of turn. I didn't mean to. I thought it was someone that said, but it's the net on the self-employment income.
This is John Lopez. If somebody is self-employed contractor through a gig service, do they need to stop working to have PPP loan forgiven?
You read it one more time?
If someone is a self-employed contractor through a gig service.
What's a gig service?
Like
GIG?
Yeah, GIG.
Okay.
Do they need to stop working to have their PPP loan forgiven?
All right. Well, long story, no. You don't have to stop working in any way, shape, or form. The loan is, of course, based on what qualifies, and then it's meant to pay you. Now, you said they were self-employed?
Self-employed contractor through a GIG service. Do they need to stop working to have PPP loan forgiven?
Well, that's a really good question because I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. And here's why it's a good question that I've got these goodies that I'm saving up for when we get more guidance. So schedules. First one I'm going to tell you is don't stop working. Okay. If you it's good for the soul. Work with the sole proprietor, the self-employed, the independent contractor. There's nothing in the provisions that say you need to stop working first and foremost, but that's a great question because you still have to pay yourself.
And what JJ?
Oh, you know what? Unless guidance comes out, here's the answer. No, you keep working because a business can still be open or not open. The money comes in and it's helping to pay payroll. Okay. It's not, I got PPP money and my business closed and then I'm paying my employees. So you don't need to close your business. You don't need to stop working. That money coming to you should still be all forgiven. The only thing I'm going to put an asterisk next to that is that we might get some guidance, but I cannot imagine for a second that the intention of that PPP is for you to stop working.
Our next question is one that I actually know the answer to, but if you're on workers' comp, can you apply for unemployment? The answer is no, because that is considered double dipping.
Yeah, so I know that we help out in that industry. We have a company that we consult with to help those that are in this that are on work comp. But anyways, yeah, it's unfortunate because we know work comp's not enough. But I will say this, okay? The jury might be out on that one for federal unemployment because the CARES Act indicated even for those that don't qualify for state unemployment benefits, they still qualify for federal unemployment benefits. We don't have a lot of guidelines. There's nowhere yet to go and apply, which I think is amazing that hasn't happened. Is amazing as in, come on, guys. But I would say look into it. Don't just go and assume that you're not going to qualify for the federal, because when you're reading through, the threshold is much lower. Self-employed individuals qualify for unemployment. And I think that would be if you didn't have any work, but.
Frederick Lowe again. It's 3 a.m. Eastern time. Good morning, JJ. I woke up and ran to post this question since I went to bed before seeing you had just posted your new video for today's video. I'm self-employed with 0 employees. How do you think they will allow us with a net profit from Schedule C who are on commission? I'm a CFP that derives all of my revenue from insurance and broker commissions. How can you use that net revenue to pay payroll since it's from commission?
Yeah, so great question. I have my insurance license. I'm an advisor through one of the national companies, but I have a DBA. and I get for that income. I only do this with my current clients, but I get a 1099. I get a W-2 statutory employee, which is more to say that all came from commissions. And if we look at the CARES Act in Section 1102, and we look at the payroll costs, in AA, the first thing that's listed is salary, wage, commission. Now, I follow that that's related to payroll, but this is all in the same category. Down in BB, where it talks specifically about self-employed, it says the sum of any compensation to or income of a sole proprietor, an independent contractor, that is a wage, commission, income, net earnings. So 100% it counts. You would want your 1099s. I think the bank's going to want 1099s. It helps substantiate things. It'd be based on what I'm knowing right now. It would be based on the net on your Schedule C. Grab your Schedule SE. But I will tell you this, if you get a W-2 statutory employee, you're not going to have a Schedule SE because the Social Security and Medicare tax was withheld at the statutory employer level. So the SE doesn't mean anything, and there might be a few banks that might be a tad unaware. So long story short, commissions count, get your 1099s, and then the net from the Schedule C is what will be applied, is what you'll be able to loan.
This one from Josie. Hi, JJ. You've been so generous with your time. Take care of yourself. Independent contractor looking to file on Friday. Just myself, no employees or contractors. I have personal checking accounts at 2 large banks, but since I have very little business expense, I do not have a business bank account. Both bank websites, as of today, state a business account is needed to file. Do you think things will change Friday when the PPP opens up to Schedule C businesses?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, from my perspective, let me see. I'm gonna text this banker.
While he's texting that, I just want to remind everyone to please hit the subscribe button. We would greatly appreciate that, and that will help us be able to get more information out to you guys. You'll be notified whenever JJ goes live. So if you're here and you're waiting, please subscribe. Please share this video. Please share JJ the CPA. You can find him on all social media platforms. Just put in JJ the CPA and he'll be there. And a reminder, if we don't get to your question for time constraints, then please tune in tomorrow at 4 p.m. Central, and we will do this all over again, and we will go through and answer the questions.
Hey, buddy, I'm live on YouTube, and I got a question for a self-employed individual that doesn't have a business account because they're, in essence, self-employed, sole proprietor, independent contractor. That they're not required necessarily to have a business account. But are you guys going to be allowing those individuals that are self-employed, if they don't have a business account, to go ahead and apply? There's a couple of banks that have indicated they're not doing that. If you'd let me know, that'd be great. Thank you. All right, we'll see what my friend and great friend, see if he's able to come back with anything.
This is Nicholas Fleming. I have a restaurant that is an LLC that has been in business since 2014. We are a seasonal business in a vacation town. We start up every year on March 15th and close in October. Do we qualify for the PPP? What should we do? Thanks a lot, Nick.
Okay. I'm pouring a drink, not going to the restroom. Just read the whole question to me.
I have a restaurant that is an LLC that has been in business since 2014. We are a seasonal business in a vacation town. We start up every year on March 15th and close in October. Do we qualify for the PPP? What should we do? Thanks a lot, Nick.
Yeah, okay, yeah, great question. Haven't had a lot on the seasonal. There is specifically in the law, it talks about seasonal. And in the guidance that came out yesterday, it talks about seasonal. And so if you go to my JJ the CPA help website, and on the main page, there is the SBA frequently asked questions. And if you look at, let's see, seasonal, independent. I may not find it fast enough for you, but they gave guidance on the seasonal. And honestly, it might be, if you go to JJ the CPA Help, there's 2 SBA pictures. One that says SBA frequently asked questions and SBA guidance. Click on either one, and then it'll take you to what they came out with. Long story short, there is specific guidance, but just read that, because it's basically taking a short period of time of when you're opening and then extrapolating it. So if you're open this many months, take that divided by however many months it is versus 12 times the 2.5 is basically what it is. But there are specific time frames that they've given on that. So definitely qualify.
I just want to shout out to Salivar, and I know I'm probably totally messing up your last name, and I'm sorry, but he has been all over YouTube from the very beginning. And he just said, JJ is awesome, jumped on the phone real time like a boss.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for all the compliments. I really, really appreciate it so much.
Dorothy, I'm self-employed and receive a 1099. The PPP loan will cover payroll costs, interest on mortgage, rent, and utilities. Now, does that mean my personal mortgage, rent, and utilities, or the business mortgage, rent, and utilities?
Yeah, great question. Specifically the business. What I've not seen yet, though, is for someone that has a home office. I have a hunch that maybe if you are using the same rules and regulations that the IRS has already spelled out for years in determining a home office deduction, that you would be able to allocate a portion of those, which most of the time is very little. But the real true answer there is no. Only if it was an allocation that has not been put anywhere related to that. So good question. It has to be. And then for those that, I brought this up. So, there's those of us, you have a business or we have clients and they're running expenses through the business. And they might be running a car loan through the business. There's nothing wrong with that, right? It's an owner, it's their car, it's their business. They're just running it through. It's non-deductible, whatever the case is, doesn't matter. But the thing to note is just because it's paid by the business, that debt, it has to be in the business's name for it to qualify as a loan for interest.
All right, this one is one question, but 2 other people have the same exact question, so we're going to knock 3 out with 1. This is for Roy, Gail, Memories Forever, Christy Tan, and Greg Harper. LLC filing with Schedule C. I have 10 1099s that I issue, and I'm also receiving 1099s. I've already applied for the PPP as a business. Should have waited and submitted as self-employed. Question, is there a way to switch? Should I apply again on the 10th? Thank you.
So based on that, you should not have been able to get a PPP based on the 1099s that you pay out. So there was a 36-hour period of time that bankers got themselves convinced that you could include based on a ridiculous interpretation of the CARES Act. And it came down to one word, and, when it should have said or, but everybody knew the intent. And that's why the SBA came out both Friday and yesterday to indicate. So you didn't do anything wrong. I'm not at all saying that, because there was a very small window of time everybody started panicking that you can include 1099s. And I had to literally calm clients down to say, you're not going to be able to do that. That's not the intent. Long story short is, it sounds like maybe you hit in that window. I would talk to your banker, because technically you should have not put that in, right? So you should withdraw it. That's going to be up to the bank on how to do it. There's no precedence for that. It's not that you've done anything wrong. You're not going to get in trouble, but your bank's going to have to help you unwind that, okay? But the long story short on that is that you properly should apply as a self-employed, because it's based on your net, right? So you receive 1099s cash, income, check, credit card, whatever. Here's your gross. You have all your expenses, including the 1099s that you paid out. So based on your net is how you would calculate it. So I'd go back to the bank and say, here's how we should have done it. That is totally the bank's fault, in my opinion. 100% they should have known better, because it was clear Friday morning before applications went live that that wasn't included. And it does state that while, yes, the bank can rely on the borrower's information, it does specifically state in the application that it is the bank that determines the amount of loan. So that's on the bank. No one's going to get in trouble or go to jail over it. It might hiccup some things. So see what your bank recommends.
This is from Norman Soto. I applied for both the PPP and the EIDL. I have one employee. Can I give myself a raise so I end up using both for payroll, or use PPP before June 30th and the EIDL after that?
So the PPP has to be used within 8 weeks, period. You have to look at whatever you were paying in the last 12 months. The reason they're coming up with this average monthly payroll is to avoid those that maybe don't have enough payroll costs, so they give raises out to their employees or themselves to just reach forgiveness. So the raise will not help. When you're dealing with the EIDL, they can't be used for the same purpose. So segregate out your costs related to that. But based on the payroll, the best advice I could give, if both monies are coming to you, is that you would use your PPP money, because you have an 8-week countdown on that. There is no countdown on the EIDL. But then once you've run out of your PPP money, and I mean like run out of it, then you would be able to use your EIDL, because it wouldn't be for the same purpose or the same expenses. In terms of substantiating that, I think it would just be based on records and circumstances and actual dollar amounts and what got spent. But the June 30 is not at all part of the equation here, other than you have till June 30 to apply for the PPP. And June 30, okay, there's a head count that comes into play, but you've got to still spend the money, can't do raises, and you got to segregate those things out.
This is from Pools Artistic Plastering. I have an expired business license, and the EIDL application second page is asking me all about my current business address, status, telephone number, etc., etc. My license is not current, so therefore my application would be outdated regarding the business information. Does this disqualify me from the EIDL application, or does me paying 1099s for the last 3 years qualify me? Is there any other disaster assistance I can apply for in my current situation?
So the only other disaster relief would be possibly at the state level. I don't know anything specific other than we had a nice participant that said in New Jersey there are a couple of different programs. As it relates to the outdating of a business license and things to that effect, that's not a qualification. It's just, do you have a business, and is it active, and was it on February 15th, 2020? So there's even an example in what the SBA gave out where somebody started a business January 13th, I think it said, and so they're able to use the payroll that they had in that small period of time. Point is that if you're still active, that's what matters, not about your license, if I'm understanding that part correctly. And then was there a second part to that? Okay. And so yeah, you would be able to get the EIDL, meaning that's not a disqualification as I understand it to get that. And then as it relates to the address and the EIN number and all that good stuff, your EIN's from the IRS, so it wouldn't matter if you had another license that quote unquote was outdated.
This is from Tio. Single member LLC created 3/28/2019. Filed 2019 taxes for not much income, $14,600. Most cash, few checks, no payroll. What can I apply for? EIDL, Express Bridge. I suppose I can't apply for PPP because no payroll. Thank you.
Does it say how they're taxed? Okay, so if you're if you're self-employed and you're doing a Schedule C, you would be able to do the PPP. If you're not, then you would be able to do the EIDL. And on the EIDL, as I'm understanding now, I'm hearing people are getting less. And so you may not get that much from it. But the PPP, if you're not self-employed, then it's only based on wages.
This is from DJ the Con. My question is, why don't people put rental properties in an S Corp? I always see LLCs or the recommendations.
Yeah, so little off topic, but the reason is that with an LLC taxed as a partnership, so an LLC can be taxed as anything. An LLC can be an S, a partnership, a C Corp, or disregarded, i.e. a sole proprietor. So, but to your point, everybody does somewhat kind of go with an LLC is the partnership because that's the default. And the reason is that in a partnership, you can do step up in basis under code section 751. It's easy in and out. You maintain the classifications. You have a way to have your debts increase your basis to take your losses where none of that's allowed on the S Corp. S Corp's really meant for you're active in the business, where a partnership is really more designed for a business that you're not directly active in. That's very general.
Darius McLeod, JJ, great job, much
Thank
appreciated,
you.
Great info. If you ever open up for new clients, please let me know.
Thank you.
Jill Jones, does laborers count as employees as self-employed? I give them a 1099 at the end of the year.
Yeah, unfortunately it doesn't. SBA came out with guidance. Go to my website, jjthecpahelp.com. You don't provide any information to me to get the information I have on there. But on the main page, as of today, there is two aspects or two memos that you go to that say SBA on each one. And the SBA made it very clear that if you pay someone 1099, you do not get to include it as part of your payroll costs. And the reason for that is that they can then go get a PPP. So might let them know that if they're unable to continue to work.
This is from Feta. Hello, JJ. What's your recommendation if none of the banks here in Southern California are accepting PP applications?
Man, you know, I mean, it sounds, I mean, I guess just, you know, check around with other banks. Oh, I know. Check with, you know, you might have a chamber of commerce that lists banks that are doing it. Because it seems like there are, you know, banks that are wanting to make sure that people know. Also, you know, check with the Bankers Association, you know, for California. There might even be a Bankers Association in, you know, of Southern California. But in essence, what you're looking for there is maybe they're going to list banks that are participating. And then if you can find a bank that's an SBA lender, they probably are still doing them because this is what they do, so to speak. I'd probably be wary of finding a bank online or a company online. Not that I'm saying you are, but unless you recognize that bank, there's probably going to be individuals already taking advantage of this where, you know, they're just getting your information. So I wouldn't do anything online.
This is from Smiling Face 110. Thanks for your informative videos.
You're welcome.
I am self-employed, no 1099, no LLC. Me and my wife work together. Everything goes to a personal checking account and we take the money out as we need. Last year gross was $64,000 and net $51,000. Please guide us which route we should take and also let me know which documents we should need to be prepared with on Friday.
They're self-employed?
Self-employed.
Okay. Okay, so you're going to be basing it on your net unless they come out with other guidance, but I can't imagine they're going to base it on the gross. So it'd be based on your net. I would bring your Schedule C. If you did receive any 1099s, I would bring that. And then if you've got a Schedule C, you're going to have a Schedule SE, and that'll show plainly, here is the income that's subject to the self-employment tax. I would go ahead and bring a P&L if you haven't filed for 2019, because that's what I would say, bring your 2019 Schedule C, SE, from your individual return. If you don't have 19 done, bring a P&L for 2019. And, really, if you could have a P&L for the last 12 months, that would be good as well, meaning either or if you're keeping your books up to date. And in fact, if you're going with a P&L, you can go through either the last 12 months or through February 29th or last year. But then I would also bring, if you don't have 19's tax return done, bring your 18 Schedule C and SE, as well as your profit and loss. They're not going to rely on 18, but depending on the bank, it's going to establish that you are a self-employed individual, that you do file on a Schedule C, you do have a Schedule SE. The other thing I would say for those that are putting together profit and loss, make sure that the expenses that you are listing are expenses that are deductible, right? So entertainment, non-deductible. Meals and entertainment, 50% deductible. So if you're doing your own P&L and you have tickets to the game as an expense, okay, well, that P&L you're giving to the bank, that's not a tax deduction. So if this is based on net taxable income from your business, don't include entertainment because it's not deductible. On the meals and entertainment, include half. Life insurance, not deductible. Disability insurance, not deductible. So depending on your Schedule C and what it is that you're paying for, make sure that what you're putting on there is actually items that you would tax deduct. Car payments, not deductible. If you're looking at how you calculate your auto expense, well, it's based on mileage potentially. Point is that if you have a P&L that you're tracking, let's say out of QuickBooks or whatever, just make sure that whatever it is that you're putting on that P&L, okay, is deductible. And if you're saying, well, my CPA or my EA or my people are closed, how do I get guidance? Go look at your Schedule C from last year. Go to irs.gov. Listen, we're in a crisis. I never recommend that you would do this ever, okay? But go look, just read it. And remember this, it's plain English. The instructions are in English. They're actually written at a 4th grade level in the sense of they're trying to make it simple. We all know that it's not. But all I'm saying is don't let anything stand in your way of getting that loan. Don't piss off, I hate to use the word, the people that are helping you. Not saying that you would, but don't get mad at your CPA. I got someone that's all mad at me that I've been trying to talk to for a week and a half to get the PPP and send them the information. And I just got that they're probably going to get fired, to be honest with you. And they're all upset with me because I'm not answering their text right now. Like they started texting me an hour ago. Anyways, long story short, don't do that. All right. So don't let anything stand in your way. Gather up that info, get your P&L. Your bank is not going to probably be able to give you answers other than, well, what's the number? What's your net? They're not going to be able to help you figure out what's deductible, what's not deductible, especially if you're going with a P&L. I also don't think there's anything wrong with getting on irs.gov, take your P&L and put those numbers on a Schedule C. I'm never recommending this ever in 27 going on 28 years of practice. You should never do that alone, right? But the bank's going to need the Schedule C. Now, you would want to make sure that what you're providing is close and accurate, not to what you are going to file with the IRS. But at the end of the day, the bank needs a document to go, how did you come up with this? So if you have a P&L, the bank's going to recognize it, but they would recognize better a Schedule C form because they'll be able to see, okay, this is how the number was arrived at. So I will mention this on my website, jjthecpahelp.com, which again, you provide no information. Everything on there is free. But I did put on there a sample profit and loss because yesterday we had some individuals on and they said, hey, we don't keep QuickBooks. And I said, well, you're going to want to give some kind of profit and loss. So anyways, there's a sample profit and loss. And know this, it lists every kind of expense you possibly could have in a business, in a sole proprietorship. Long story short, make sure you're presenting something to the bank that they're going to recognize.
I will say on that, I have a lot of people that have came on and said thank you for the P&L. That really helped me.
Okay,
so
good.
People are getting it.
Okay.
This is from Mitty. My CPA is charging clients $300 to fill out the application and gather documents, or I can fill it out on my own, but he's still going to charge $150 to send me the documents. Is this a normal rate for this service? It seems ridiculously high to me. Thank you for all your videos.
Yeah, you bet. So we're not filling out the documents at all. It's a loan application. So I don't know that that's wrong. I know that, you know, a third party can help you complete these things, so to speak. There's nowhere on that application, though, that I feel that I would want to complete that. It's a loan application. The certifications, I do not know those. The client would need to sign off on those. So there's not one client that I've completed the loan app, okay? And to complete the loan app would be 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So if I were charging my time, I wouldn't find that I would spend a lot of time on that. Now, I will tell you this, for our clients, the amount of time that when you take account my staff and me and the coordination with all the various different banks, because we seem to have kind of pockets of clients that go to banks. And then we also, we're working with 3 different payroll companies. So to pull together that information, setting up a Dropbox, and then, you know, we did the calculation. We're having to go into the forms and pull the numbers, add them together. We're going to a general ledger to pull out the insurance information and or the retirement match. We're asking the client to send us their insurance documents so that we can put it in there. We are with the payroll company. We've got all the 941s in there. We have the W-2, we have the W-3. We're putting in there the payroll journal by employee. Now that's coming from the payroll company, but we got that from the payroll company, but we were communicating with them what we needed. We have it for the last 12 months. We have it for the calendar year. We requested documents that is month by month that breaks out for each employee, because in essence, they need it. And then of course we did the calculation. So I don't know the effort that your CPA is putting in, okay? But that's a lot of effort and time. And I kind of thought, you know, like $300 for my clients is what I'm going to probably charge them. And, you know, so for a client that's, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not basing it at all, right? But I think the lowest amount a client got was $18,000. And they were able to take the documents that I gave them. I did say, hey, here's the numbers. I indicated the few questions that they might have, you know, are you an S Corp? And so it's not about filling out the document, but for my clients, they had a Dropbox and everything was in there with a bow on top. Every document, it was organized. I put a letter in there to their lender to indicate how we came up with our numbers and what form to go to. And indicate how long they've been in business. We put in there a profit and loss statement, their tax return, and proof of anything they had. So we were gathering it up, and I would probably say, you know, each one that we were doing, including the calculation, because everybody has potentially a different way to get the insurance. We've got to go and extract out the state unemployment tax from one report, but then get the payroll from another report and put it all in there. Point is, you know, for us, I mean, total time for my team and me, easily 2 hours. I mean, some of these, it was longer than that. So I kind of came up with an amount of 300. At first I thought, well, I don't think I'm going to charge anyone, but I mean, you know, if I just look at, I'm not even talking about the research. I'm not talking about doing videos. If I were to just say, what's the time that I've literally spent on clients related to bankers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I haven't been able to charge for anything all last week and this week. So I think it's okay. Now, don't get me wrong. If you provided all the info, meaning you said, here's my payroll, here's my insurance, here's my retirement match, you know, you provided everything and those numbers. Okay. And then I would think $300 is too much. But the clients that are able to come up with those numbers themselves, I have it on my website. And I said, hey, if you have your numbers and you want to calculate it yourself, here's the worksheet that you can go through. So I think for us, it wasn't so much about the time to do the calculation. It was the time to gather everything and then pull the numbers from it and then put it all together. So that's why I feel okay that I am going to charge my clients. So it doesn't have anything to do with at all the amount that they got, but I just know that my clients definitely appreciate it. And then not to mention, I was working with the payroll companies that literally when I texted the banks Thursday morning, okay, the CARES Act had been passed by the Senate. There was not one banker that knew what the hell I was talking about, not one of them. And I got with the payroll companies immediately and I said, here's what's coming down the pipe. This is what I'm going to need. I need these kind of reports, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I called out to the kind of the 4 main banks that a lot of our clients work with, talked with them, their underwriters. What is it that you're going to need? Pulling together the list, researching it. So my point in saying that though, too, is that my clients had all the stuff they needed before the bank was even knowing what in the heck they were wanting. And so anyways, that's just me, right? That's JJ, the CPA level, style, hands-on, bow on top. That's what the clients are wanting. So that's a long way. I mean, trying to just talk about the time and effort that goes into that.
I'm going to break the rule for just a second and read a question from the chat because Joseph Yates, you've asked this like 8 times, so he really wants to get his question answered. We have a partnership LLC. We take owner draws. We also each have our own sole proprietorship. If our partnership LLC gets PPP, can we still apply for unemployment? Partial under the loss of our sole proprietor. If we get the PPP and decide to just repay it back, that won't affect our personal ability to apply for unemployment, will it?
So when your PPP runs out, that's when I would understand to be that you could go and get unemployment as self-employed. Of course, you don't have wages as a partnership, so therefore it is based on your net. If you have guaranteed payments and box 14 of a K-1 from a partnership, then that's your self-employment income. And as it stands now, based on what we know, I would be recommending that you would be putting in a PPP application that would be based on, your self-employment income. Now, if you have a completely separate business that you're saying that you have sole proprietorship or self-employment income on, then you would be gathering that up all with your K-1 information. But I will tell you this, that, the real answer on a complicated aspect, and when I say complicated, you have kind of 2 things going on there. Get with your bank, because right now they hold all the cards on how they're going to go about that. So I wouldn't wait till Friday when everybody else is in line. I would get done. Now, I will tell you this, one of the banks that I was working with this morning, if a partnership was paying guaranteed payments, they were rolling that into the payroll costs. I've not seen anything that substantiates that, but that's what they were doing. But that was on guaranteed payments, which would be box 4 of the K-1 of the partnership.
Okay, our next question is another 2-for-1, and this is for Dave T. and Tina Beard. I'm self-employed, and in 2019, I had a net loss. Will I be able to apply for PPP?
I don't think so, because it's based on the net from what we know now. So I did that sound because that might preclude you from getting it, unfortunately. What I'm hoping, though, is on the guidance that we don't have yet. Look and see what created the loss. There could be possibly add backs, because I know when banks are looking at, well, what did your business net for tax purposes? It may be a loss, but depreciation is typically added back. Interest may be added back. Sometimes on a sole proprietorship, whatever you have for auto expense is added back, so to speak. When I say added back, you take your loss, and in essence, you're backing out these expenses to then see potentially what your net is. So don't just go by what I'm saying to you. I would look at your Schedule C and see if you had meals and entertainment, see if you had at the top left there in the expense area, it'll say car and truck expenses. See if what you've got there. Look at your depreciation, which will be clearly indicated there. And then your interest, and maybe just have a little schedule and go, well, here was the net loss. But then if I add back, which is in essence backing out all these expenses, then here's the adjusted amount. I doubt that they will allow a sole proprietorship, self-employed, or independent contractor to go based on the gross, but absent any kind of guidance from the SBA on that, I'm going with the idea that it is a net, and that's why I think you would be in the circumstances that you are, where unfortunately you may not qualify. So then what I would say to you on that is go get the EIDL after you talk with the bank, because the EIDL will yield you something.
All right, we have about 5 questions left, and then we're going to have to wrap it up because JJ is going to be on national TV. So this one is for Shifla. Hi JJ, thanks a ton for your help. We have an S Corp and filed 2019 taxes already, but did not run payroll in 2019, as the expenses including health insurance, mortgage, and interest payments were higher than revenue. We did, however, run payroll in 2018 and 17. We have a question on PPP. Based on some articles we read, one of the accepted documentation for PPP was the P&L for 2019 rather than payroll. Can you please confirm this?
So I feel very confident. Unfortunately, you will not be able to base it on anything earlier than 2019. For an S Corp, it would be only based on the wages. The net is considered investment income, not portfolio income, but it's not self-employment income. If you were in a partnership, it'd be a different story, because the net income is typically, if you're actively involved in it, self-employment income. So from the standpoint of the circumstances, when you're talking about the P&L actually has no relevancy when you're getting a PPP loan based on payroll for an employer that has a separate entity. The P&L would be for the self-employed to arrive at the net income. So the S Corp unfortunately leads to, you have no self-employment income, and I understand the circumstances, but if you didn't have any payroll, now remember, if you had some payroll at the beginning of 2020, that'll help you. But that's where I think this is a perfect, terrible storm, where I don't know that you would, I don't see that you would unfortunately qualify for anything. I hate to say it.
Ben Collins, first, great content, awesome job.
Thank you.
Question, if someone takes money from a 401k or an IRA due to a coronavirus hardship, I know there is an ability to take up to $100,000 and pay the taxes over a 3-year period. But I'm wondering, does it have to be evenly spaced out over those 3 years? I have heard one other person say it is possible to recognize the entire withdrawal in year 3. Is this true? Can I withdraw and then choose to not recognize the income for 3 years? Can you elaborate, speculate how the IRS will allow this for 2020 taxes? Will they ask you if you took a hardship withdrawal and you obviously say yes, and then they somehow let you defer the tax if you don't want to pay it?
So great question. Sorry for your circumstances. You know, whenever we have to turn to retirement, that's tough times. It's a last resort. And I know that, you know, it's a borrowing potentially. Is that they say borrowing or pulling? They said borrowing, right?
I know there's ability to take up to $100,000.
Okay, so know this. There's 2 aspects to that. You can pull up to 100, and yeah, they're talking about withdrawing. So you can pull up to 100, and first of all, if it's due to the coronavirus, okay, then you don't pay the 10% penalty for starters if you're under 59 and a half. So that's good. The second is, anytime they've done this in the past related to other aspects, like going back to, you know, I first started practicing in 1993, there was something similar to this, and then over the time, there's been things similar to this. Typically, it's an either or, okay? you either just recognize the full 100,000 as income in 2020, or you carry it over the 3 years. And when that's done, it would be a third, a third, a third. I don't see anything in the law that allows you to recognize it at the end. What I see is that you would pay a third in 2020, a tax on a third, a third, a third. So typically in anything else as well, it's an either or, and that's how I see this as well. I really don't see, because it's never happened before, even like with installment plans, except, you know, when they had the Roth conversions, it was never, well, I can elect to pay it at the end. Now, because I started talking about the other thing, you can borrow money from your 401k, which I'd probably say would be maybe the first thing to do versus pulling money out, because then at least your money's staying in the market. And remember too, when you pull money out now, you're, you know, most likely your account is at a much lower amount than it was, you know, a couple of months ago. So when you're pulling money out here, you're actually pulling out more dollars. So if you're in the unfortunate circumstances that you are having to pull money from retirement, I would first opt to borrow against it. I'm not advocating to do anything with retirement. I think it's absolute last resort, just because that's your retirement. You deserve to maintain it. I don't mean it as a judgmental statement. I'm more just saying, hey, you know, protect your retirement. But the reason is, when you're borrowing, okay, you're not pulling money out of the market. The money can still earn. I mean, obviously it can go up and down. The one issue you have is that when you borrow money, okay, so if you were to borrow $50,000 and the value of your 401k is $75,000, okay, typically you're going to be able to borrow that, right? But if for some reason that market drops below the 50 mark, what'll trigger is it's going to sell everything to pay off that loan. So you have to be very careful in these circumstances. So don't get me wrong, it's almost better to do the borrowing because you're leaving the money in. Just be aware that you may have a value drop that then causes you to trigger a payoff. But then the reason I'm bringing this up is that the IRS has indicated that you have until January 1st, 2022, which means that you have 20 and 21, but you have till January 1st, 2022 to repay that. Normally when you borrow, okay, you've got 60 days in essence to replace it. So I'll have some videos coming out on that because we just haven't been able to get to it. Long story short, it's better to borrow against it. And then if you're pulling money out, I think it's either or, 3 years or all now, but still no 10%. And then I would anticipate on the form 1099-R, there'll be a code that's created to indicate why it was pulled out. So you might check with whoever you're pulling the money out with, or make sure they know that it's for these purposes. And if they say, well, there's no way to document it, then send an email or a letter or something to show that you're doing it. I haven't seen anything that in essence defines your hardship in dollars. You know, typically in the past, if you look at anything related to pulling money out for a 401k or an IRA and you're getting any special treatment, it would be you were unemployed and you had to then pay health insurance, not just unemployed, but you had to pay health insurance, or you're buying a first home and you actually had to buy it. So my point in saying that is I have yet to see any details of what's actually going to substantiate. So I know you can pull out to 100, but if nothing happened to you economically, I don't know that would still qualify. So jury's out a little bit on that, but I will tell you this: if you're pulling money, then I'm sure you need it. I'm sure that it then qualifies, but then do yourself a little favor, at least document it, even if it's just an email to the person that's handling your account.
Stanley O, the PPP app says only one PPP loan per person. So what do you do if you have 2 LLCs?
Oh, well, then it's person. So you would have a PPP for each LLC. That's a distinct, separate application, separate ID number, and then when they say person, then you would be looking at, okay, at the individual level, if you have a couple and they're both self-employed, they're going to do one application, but then you're doing one per EIN.
Hey, just And last two questions, and then we're going to say goodbye, and we will get to anybody's questions on this chat tomorrow, just as a reminder. This is Ty Centers. First off, thank you for what you are doing for the small business community. The info you share is amazing and so helpful during this craziness. Just have a quick question that was forwarded to me by a friend. I have a sole proprietor with one employee, myself. We did about $98,000 in 2018 and about $118,000 in 2019. My question is, because I made over $100,000 in 2019, do I qualify for the PPP, or can we use our 2018 return since we haven't officially filed 2020 taxes yet? What would you recommend?
So right now, I don't think we get to base anything on 18. Now, I had indicated when you go to the bank, bring your 18 Schedule C for those that are sole proprietor, but it was not because they're going to base anything on your 18 Schedule C. It would be to show that you're an established self-employed individual is really the purpose of that. So you're really only going to be able to base things on 19, but the law says you can do it on the last 12 months. So you can look at it, and I don't want to say it's quote unquote dealer choice, so to speak, but take a look at it, figure it out. But the thing to note is it's not if you're over 100, you're out. It's just that it's going to be up to 100. So I don't know that you would have to do a lot of reevaluating in the sense of, if your net is 100 or more, well, it's just going to be 100 plus the health insurance and the retirement match.
Jeff Y, who we answered a question for earlier, just said, Jeff from Blue Line Tax Service in New Jersey wants to thank you for taking the time to share the knowledge and resources that you have learned during this tough time. You down with PPP? Yeah, you know me. And then Wayne said, thank you, JJ. I vote you for Man of the Year.
Well, I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Is that our question?
This is our last question.
Okay. And I wish we could keep going. We're at 2 hours, 21 minutes. We're going to go live tomorrow at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. You're saying we are able to get back to these questions?
I will be able to get back to these, and we'll just do this again. There's a lot more than there was. And we appreciate you guys, and we will do our best to get to every single question. And this is Lawrence. I was on a conference call with SBA. They were telling me that the 10,000 advance is based on employees. If you have one employee, then you get 1,000. And if you have 10 or more, you get 10,000. Do you have any information on this?
Yeah, so I had read that same memo that came out yesterday, but what's interesting is the EIDL though is it's for overhead costs. It's to help with liabilities like loans, equipment costs. For restaurants, it's to help with cost of goods sold. So the EIDL is more, in my opinion, it's more for companies that don't have payroll. So I have read an article that in essence is, and I tread lightly because I think the SBA is trying the hardest that they possibly can, but it was indicating that the SBA was changing the rules. Now, there's not just somebody up there changing it. There had to be a lot of consideration and approval. It's a huge governmental agency that, if you ask me, the SBA is the best friend of the small business. But what I've heard some criticism because EIDL is not really for payroll. It includes payroll, but it's not really for payroll only. So I'm surprised that they're doing that because the PPP, is payroll. So the EIDL should be, I don't have payroll. I don't have any way to get any assistance here. So going to the EIDL should be then the option to help those businesses that don't have employees. So, I appreciate you letting me know, because I'm sure if you talked with the SBA, you definitely heard it from, the source. The memo that I indicated that I read, it didn't indicate that, period, the end, this is based on payroll. If you have one, it's 1,000. You have 10 or more, then it's 10,000. It just did say it's based on that. So what I would say this, if you're applying for an EIDL, it would be because you don't have wages, meaning you can't even get a PPP. And then just look carefully at your numbers to, because you have to put in what's your gross and what's your cost of goods sold. So maybe we need to reevaluate what is the definition of cost of goods sold for SBA purposes, because what it very well may be is that it's the payroll plus your cost of goods sold, even though the SBA didn't tell you that. And it may be because you didn't have cost of goods sold. So at the end of the day, get the EIDL if you don't have payroll. And it sounds like now, if you do have payroll, I used to, and I'm going to have to evaluate whether or not I still keep this video up, but I had a video up that was like kind of the break even, where your payroll costs were less than 48,000. Well, you should just go get the EIDL, because until a couple days ago, it was 10K. It didn't matter if it was one employee or not, you got 10K. My fear is, not to cause any angst, but my fear is that they may have started doing this, because what I'm reading is that people that have applied for the EIDL going back 2-3 weeks haven't heard anything, they haven't gotten the money. So I'm hoping that they're not reevaluating that back. Plus, it also changed the whole dynamic of, if you're going to get $1,500 from an EIDL, then I wouldn't worry about getting a PPP, because it'd be very easy to go, all right, hey, I got my EIDL. It was spent while my PPP was in application process. So, yeah. Well, hey,
I want to give one thing. Paul's artistic plastering, and you're asking us to answer the question. He actually did about 10 questions ago. So after this live video's ended, you're going to watch it back and go kind of towards the last probably 30 minutes of the show, and your question was answered. So make sure that you watch this again to get that.
Yeah. So thank you to everybody. And here's the thing. So I did put up a video yesterday to list questions for today. So I'm going to take that down. I'm not going to put up a new video. I'm not going to collect new questions. Tomorrow, best I can regather. We will tackle the first questions that were in here. Because did we even get to these?
We didn't get to any of these.
Okay. So thanks for tuning in. Know this, that if you were on first and you asked questions in the beginning, we'll be answering those first, and we'll go through. And I guess the way this is going to work is that the questions that we get today, we're answering tomorrow. And then if we can get all those answered, then we might get in the answers of the day. So I'll be live tomorrow, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I've gone 2.5 hours. I'll probably do that the same. I'd love it if you'd subscribe. I really would appreciate that. And then I was planning on doing this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, today being Tuesday. If I can't get to all the questions, right, we still have too many questions, then we'll do this on the weekend. I will let you know that time. I don't think I'm going to do 4 o'clock on a Saturday or Sunday. Probably do something earlier. But what I want to do is try and answer as many questions as I can. So thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I love the support. Please subscribe. And, we're going to get through this. We're going to make it. The money that's coming through, I know we're in an antsy week of, I want to get this done. I want to make sure I can get it through. So you're doing the right things. You're getting good information. Go to jjthecpahelp.com. There's nowhere to enter in your information. It's not a funnel. I don't ask for your information. You can't even figure out my information. But in there, beyond PPP, I've got information about the tax credits. I've got worksheets. I've got information there to help you calculate it. Today, here's my cash position. Where am I going to be in 3 weeks? So when you've got money coming in, EIDL or PPP, one of the things you also want to do is figure out, well, when I get this money, what's it going to look like in 3 weeks? Where am I going to be? Because it's going to be a flood of thoughts and considerations, especially once the money arrives. So before it arrives, so anyways, like I said, I'm providing this for free. You're not going to go to this website and then enter an address to be able to get this, but on jjthecpahelp.com, go to the page on it that's called resources. And I've got a number of videos in there that talk about, just from a general business standpoint, what to be thinking about in a crisis or downtime. And then what I think you want to be looking at for those small business owners that are on, remember this, we're going to open. Okay. So start planning. What does September look like? Because you know by September you're open. Okay. You know by September you're going to be open. So you don't know if you're open by the end of April or the end of May. Maybe this is somehow into June, but you know you're going to be open in September. So what does September look like to you, and work your way backwards. Preserve your resources now. Now, I know with the PPP, we got 8 weeks to spend it and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, remember, fellow small business owners, sole proprietors, independent contractors, we're on the front lines, right? Doing these things. What does September 30 look like? Okay. We're past Labor Day. We're going into, Halloween season, right? We're going into, isn't the presidential election this year? So if you need something to think about, maybe that's gets you fired up. But my point is, small business owners, remember this. When you started your business, sole proprietors, independent contractors, single member LLC, those that, whether you're an employee and doing something, remember this, when you were thinking about starting your business, when you were thinking about opening the doors and what's the name of your business? Am I going to open a bank account? What is it that I'm going to be doing? You were with enthusiasm. You most likely were with confidence. You knew it was going to work out, and there was no promise of anything to you, most likely. When you opened that restaurant, when you decided to open the barbershop, when you opened your salon, when you decided to do the lawn care business or become a dentist that was then also going to have your own practice, you had the faith. You knew the customer was going to walk in. You had the faith that you were going to make money next week and next month. And you went and got loans knowing, hey, I'm going to recover. I'm going to make money and I'm going to get it back. So I know that we're going through this phase right now and we're home and we're locked in, which is kind of like caging a tiger for us self-employed entrepreneurs, small business owners, sole proprietor. We need to be out, right? And doing what we do, because typically when we hit circumstances like this, what do? We find another way. We find a different option. We do something in addition to, we work harder. And right now we're not able to do that. So what I'm saying is, our normal energy as small business owners, sole proprietors, independent contractors, take that energy right now, okay, and put it towards what does September look like for you, okay? Now, it may be you know doom and gloom for the next 2 or 3 months, but it won't be in September. Most likely won't be in August, probably won't be in July. What does that look like? Work your way backwards, put together a plan. What's it going to look like when you're now able to go outside, so to speak? What's it going to look like when you reopen the doors? What can you do now, right now, on social media or phone calls or texts or follow-up or letters to customers? What can you do to remind your customers who you are and that you're open and that you're thinking of them? And what you're doing now is you're keeping your energy alive as a small business owner, sole proprietor, independent contractor, is you're using that energy that you're used to using probably 20 hours out of the day, including when you're sleeping. So basically, get ready for September now, which is also in JJ the CPA, in talking about how to get prepared. So we got to get through next week. We got to get through this month. But here's the deal. Come September, you're doing something, okay? If you're a restaurant owner, you're open. And if you're a restaurant owner and you're not open in September and everybody else is rocking and rolling, you know why you're not open in September? Because you probably came up with something different, better, okay? Long story short, us business owners are going to be small, big, different, self-employed, one person. In September, we will be back. If not August or July or June, we will be back. Think of that era. What does that look like? And start working your way backwards. Because, again, I'll close with this. Reconnect with that energy you had when you were working for somebody else and you were like, what would it look like if I worked for myself? When you were on the brink of starting your own business, you signed that initial lease, you signed that initial loan, you hired your first employee, right? You had no idea if you're going to be able to make payroll in 2 months when you hired this new employee. You didn't know if the customers that you brought in would be there in a month. You didn't know when you opened your restaurant, would people like your food and come back? But that's because the entrepreneurial, small business, self-employed, independent contractor, that spirit, okay, don't lose it, okay? Because, you know, for me, when I look at having my own practice going on 24 years, May 15th, if I'm down and out, you know, let's just say for, you know, 28 days or 60 days, how many days have I had my business? And that little period of time is right here, because I know I'm going to have that much more after that. So we will survive it, and use your energy to get yourself to September 30, because when we get to September 30, things will be different, but probably in a better way. We'll be leaner in the sense of we'll be thinking through having some extra dollars aside. We might think different about how we're spending our money, think to that effect. All to say, we'll be better for this. All right. Hey, thanks for tuning in. I'd love it if you'd subscribe. I'm going to leave this up live. But I'm leaving. And the only reason is so that Amanda can figure out how to make sure that we lock this down in the sense of going through the questions tomorrow. I'll have some other videos coming out. I'll have an update that'll come out later tonight. I have a daily update. There's another episode of the CPA show for those that really want to dive into technicalities. It'll come out tomorrow morning. And then if you watch, if you have cable here in just a little bit, I'm going to be on Graham Ledger's show, the Daily Ledger. And I'm only on there for a few minutes. Hopefully it worked out in the terms of the audio. We had a little snafu. But anyways, check that out. And then I'll see you tomorrow live. Thank you again for all the support. And I guess that's it.
That's it.
All right.
You've
never met a CPA quite like me. And I'll tell you this, you've never met a sole proprietor, independent contractor, small business owner, single member LLC, partnership owner, S Corp owner, total bad to the bone, individual, small business like you. All right. Hey, we're going to get through this. JJ, the CPA, out. Thank you so much for all the compliments. I look forward to reading through all of these. Thank you for making my day. And I'm glad to be able to spend the energy doing this. Thank you so much.